but it was cold out there. I was the same thing, you know. I
Oh
just slept
yeah.
all day.
Yeah,
I
that's
slept
what
all
the day
day,
is for,
man.
man. That's what it's about. Gotta rest up, man. We work hard all week. They say work
Yeah,
hard, play
yeah.
hard, but sometimes you gotta rest
Yeah.
hard too, man. Especially when you
Exactly.
start
That's
getting
right.
these.
We getting
You
older.
can't,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, man. Can't do it like how we used to, shorty.
That's I had that same conversation with somebody this morning. I called him on the phone. He was like, "Yeah, man. Back in the day, we push it, do whatever we was needing to do. Is we survive on 4 hours of sleep? Not no more.
Right, right. Nah, Jack. Mm.
Getting older.
Okay. So I'll just making sure that we're live on YouTube and stuff. So
What's up, YouTube?
yeah,
Ah,
yeah. I mean, one of the things that'd
yeah,
be
man, I
great.
want to put my intellectual glasses on like y'all. I'm sitting here looking like
Hey,
the next
I need these to
bedroom, and y'all
see.
got on like y'all know a little something. So I'm gonna
Hey,
put on my
I
specs
need them to
like y'all.
see.
Hey, me too. Me too.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, no, yeah, as I said, same thing. Need my glasses to see and stuff.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I mean, how's it been with you? I mean, it's. I mean, how's it been? I mean, what have you been up to most?
Oh man, same as always. Working, staying out the way to the best of my abilities. That's all I do.
Yeah, the and Sheldon, what about yourself?
Oh, same here, man. Just working, just relaxing, taking it easy. I just was at Morgan State. Of course, Baltimore. I was at a
Yeah, yeah, definitely. My mom went
black
there.
it was a black entrepreneur conference or whatever I had went to. It was like they had a 3-day joint over the course of
Oh, nice.
February, and I went to the last day yesterday. It was really, really good. That was my first
Okay.
time on campus, so it was really, I liked it, man. Really liked
Oh,
it.
that's dope. That's dope. I'm
Hmm.
surprised you ain't stay down. They doing the whole CIAA thing all this
You know
weekend
what,
too.
man? I slept on getting tickets, man, and I need to
I
do it.
got
I slept
got
on getting tickets.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay. I'm just getting it's all set up. Yeah. So one of the things that we wanted to look at today, and I actually struggled with trying to find my top 10 female and male artists. I think I did better with the male artists, but I couldn't find my favorite. So this is not like who's the best 10 female artists and male artists, but these were my favorite. And I had
Okay.
more male favorite song singers that I put up there, and I struggled with the females and stuff. So, so it'd be interesting to see, because it's impossible to name the best in the world and stuff, but it's always good to see
Right.
how our favorites are. So, and I don't know, did you guys arrange yours in who's your favorite number one or to the 10, or did you just put 10 of your best in each category?
And probably like favorite for real for me, because I mean I'm real definitive with my favorites, like who I put on my what they call like a Mountain Rushmore or something like that.
Yeah, but did you
Yeah,
list
like
them
I
from
got my
number one
certain.
down to 10, or did you just put 10 with no particular order?
I don't think they're in a particular order. It's
Okay,
just the ones that go in there.
okay,
Yeah, because
okay.
that change, I might hear a song from this one this week, and I'll be like, oh, I love her. And then I hear another song from one of the other ones, like, oh man, that just knocked them down a notch because I got to put them at the number one, but I just put them all in a family. Like I love all.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so is there a preference to start with the males or females? What's the deal?
It don't matter.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think males are a lot more common. So maybe we can start off with the females, because as I said, to me that was one of the harder ones. And
Yeah.
so maybe we can just get who would be in your So I mean, Woody, you can give me your first female and why you put it down.
Okay. Man, Shirley Murdoch.
Oh,
She, man, like that voice. It's like when I first heard her, I was a little boy, of course. And when I heard what's it called? No Way I Can Go On Without You. And it's like I didn't know anything about music that wasn't church music for real, but that song just made me, and I had never been in a relationship at that point because I was so young, but it just made me feel a certain way, like almost brought tears out of me, like an emotion that I didn't understand.
Yeah.
And then I did a play later on. It was a play that I was in. Well, not the one that I was in, the one that preceded the one that I was in. I went because Casey and JoJo were in it. So of course I'm a fan of them. So I want to be anywhere where I could hear them sing. And she was also in the play, and she did like this interlude, whereas though she wasn't even singing words. She's just doing something like da 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 and stuff like that, like little skits or whatever you want to call it. And that made me feel that same way. So I'm like, anytime you don't even have to say words, and you get to your voice is that powerful and that beautiful that it make me feel a kind of way like that. Then to find out later about her lyricism and the fact that she went towards like gospel, and even the songs like As We Lay, she was still like trying to portray a message about like fidelity and being faithful and stuff like that. So even with that gift, we say with great power come great responsibility. She was being responsible with that gift and that power she had. She still wanted to use it for good, you know. That definitely makes me respect her as a person as well as one of my favorite all-time vocalists.
Wow.
I hope that wasn't too long for real.
No, that's
Y'all
good.
probably like,
That's
it ain't
good,
asked
man.
you
That's
all that.
good.
We just asked you, you know.
What
That's good.
about, what about yourself, Sheldon?
No, let them run. Let them run, because you know I did mine before and they murdered me. So let's go ahead.
No. Yeah, but what's which of the first one? Which of your 10 are you going to put in?
Okay. What I would do is I'll redeem myself because I left off the two other people that I should have left off before. So I'll go with Shaka Khan. Shaka Khan, and it's strange because, you know, when I was a kid, Shaka Khan was cool. You know, she was putting out, I remember her like the Rufus, you know, when she was with the band singing the records. When she started coming out with the solo records, it was okay. But again, you're talking about that's like, it was an older vibe. But as time went on, I started really getting into her music. I think maybe about 16, 17, 18. And I put her on my list because Shaka Khan is a person who could sing it all. She could do funk, she can do traditional R&B, she could do up tempos, she could do ballads, and then she could do jazz. So she was really versatile, and she could put all those songs on her album. So you could put on a Shaka Khan album and you can get that whole vibe. She would touch every type of classic category of music. Then of course, some of her music was like dance music, like disco music too, man. So it was just great. I think her versatility really stood out to me as time went on, you know. So she's on my list.
So yeah, so I didn't go back as well. Well, if I said I was going to go back, but before I go too far back, Tamir, when she first came out with "You Put a Move in My Heart," I mean, because the song was written by Rod Temperton and produced by Quincy, it reminded me of my all-time favorite song, "The Lady in My Life." So it was in the same sort of sonic structure and everything. And Tamir has such a recognizable voice that's almost tastes like feels like honey in how she had her tonation. And when she was first introduced to the world from that Quincy, I can't remember, was it not Q joint? It was the second. No, it was Q joint, not Back in the Block.
Q's juke joint.
Q's juke joint. But I mean, maybe because I was so warm to the song and what it is, but she does have a very distinct voice, very different and very powerful, such an underrated artist. So she makes my top 10.
Man, I never knew that Rod Temperton wrote that song for real. You just taught me something.
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
that beautiful melody. Yeah,
So
he's one of the all-time. We ever talk about songwriters, he definitely got to be in that top 10. For real.
Yeah. He definitely is.
Arrangements, all that, like that.
Yeah, don't worry. We'll do our top 10 songwriters in another edition. But who else will be who's your next one?
Man, Vesta. All mine's old school, so all mine's far back. But
okay.
Yeah, man, Vesta Williams, man, may she rest in peace.
Wow.
First, Congratulations is one of my all-time favorite songs. And it's like, once again, I was too young to have been in a relationship, but like those songs made me almost make you want to be in a relationship. So somebody could feel like that about you. And then it didn't hurt that in my eyes, she was like super, super easy on the eyes. You know, even from back in the old school days when she was heavy set for real, she still was like bad to me, man. I wouldn't worry about none of that. She was just super bad to me. And then like her sense of humor, she used to come on shows on BET when BET, the old school BET, when it was like just all straight fun and, you know, and she used to come on the talk shows and tell little jokes and stuff and tell naughty jokes that I didn't even know what she was talking about. I had to go look it up or ask somebody, what she talk about? Oral fixation. What that mean? I'm like, hey, whatever she about it, I need to learn how to be about it or whatever, because I just loved her. And then that voice and that one song, is, and as well as some of her other songs, that's like one of a kind once again, man. The originals, not like nowadays, not knocking. We got some talent nowadays, but a lot of people sound alike. Back then, each person had their distinctive sound and style where you know that's them as soon as you hear the first line out the song, you know?
Wow, that's okay. Sheldon.
Phyllis Hyman. Phyllis Hyman, I got her on my list because, like I said before, she was the type of singer who was really good at everything. She could do the whole Quiet Storm balladry. She could do up-tempo records. She could do jazzy type of records. She would collaborate with jazz singers or whatever. And she had a tone, a diction, and enunciation that was really supreme. When you listen to her, it was just very crystal clear. Her voice had a nice richness to it. Very a lot of emotion in the records. And then other thing too, she didn't come from the church, but she still had a power in her voice that was very, very dramatic. And just, you know, she was just great at everything. Okay. That's why I put her on the list. And of course, like you said, she was very easy on the eyes, very quick-witted, sense of humor. And what a lot of people don't realize is that she was the jump off before Clive Davis started having success with all the other females on Arista Records. She was the first, but at the time she didn't benefit from how other future female singers would in later eras in terms of being able to diversify and do different things. You know, she did a little bit before her time, but I like to just say, even for the listeners who don't know who she is, she was Adele before Adele. I'll just say that.
Okay. Well, I do plan to do a special feature on Phyllis Hyman, because there is just to get an understanding of who she is and stuff, because for those of us who were international, we didn't, people like Vesta, Phyllis Hyman, they weren't as big outside, even Stephanie Mills, they weren't as big outside of the US as, say, Shaka Khan or Patti LaBelle. So when people talk about Stephanie Mills everyone talks about Stephanie Mills, I'm like, I never really knew her. So I'm going to be, that's going to be something that I've thought about probably next month, trying to do a special on Phyllis Hyman, just to get an understanding about the woman. For myself, I'm going to go and take somebody whose birthday it is today, which is Tammy Lucas. And the one thing about her is that because she was one of the people who first time I heard her was on Goodbye Love with Guy. She was on she didn't do Make It Last Forever, but she did Right Way and a Wrong Way on Keith Sweat's Make It Last Forever album. She was on Let's Stay Together. So she was always like Teddy's muse, helping co-write a lot of his stuff, singing a lot of background vocals. And, we really heard, we saw her when she had her first solo stuff with Is It Good to You? But then, with Tonight's Tonight with Blackstreet, such an underrated voice, such an underrated singer. And unfortunately, with politics within the camp, she didn't get to release her debut album, even though she had the songs with Neptunes and Teddy. It's just that it didn't get pushed out. So Tammy would be one of my all-time in my top 10. Back to you, Woody.
That's so dope, man, because you interviewed her, like, and I knew who she was because I remember Is It Good to You? Like, that was another one of those songs. Like, that voice gave me a feeling too, because it was so smooth. And she sings effortlessly. Like, you know, some people, like, when I used to sing at church, my mom used to always say, put yourself into it, give it some oomph or whatever. She does the opposite. Like, she does that on certain songs, like Tonight's the Night. She definitely put herself into it. But Is It Good to You just felt so effortless. Like, she just opened her mouth and that just beautiful sound just poured out. So I respect her a lot. And to piggyback off of you, brother Shelton, man, I gotta say the person who everybody say that they want to play Phyllis, if it's ever what you call it, like a biography or a biopic. I think I'm saying it right. Biopic or whatever. Jasmine Sullivan, man.
Wow.
That lady, man, her voice, another one that just opened their mouth and runs and beautiful stuff just pours out. It don't even seem like she think about it. Like, you look at old videotapes of her when she was like 12, singing at the Apollo, and her at 12 sound better than, I dare say, pretty much any of the new lineup or new recruits that they got out there now at the full grown, full maturity, you know, and it's like the fact that she does it. Say it again.
Oh, no, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying the fact that she just makes it look so easy and it's so effortless, and then she got a pen on her too. Like the songs that she actually wrote, that Let It Burn is my favorite, the one that got the After 7 sample in it. But it's just like that voice, that look, like she reminds me of like a modern day Phyllis for real, you know. So I love her too.
And to piggyback off what you said, she was almost, you know, there was a period of time where she wanted to retire from the industry. She left the industry because there was a lot of pressure, because at the time it was a shift in female singers, and they really were, it was more of the visual and less about the actual technique. And she didn't have that necessarily that look. She didn't have the traditional look that a lot of like the sexy singers had. So there's a moment in time where she,
I feel what you say.
Yeah, she is. Yeah, she left it. She left the industry, but the same frustration that she had was the same frustration that Phyllis Hyman had. That she had the talent, but she didn't get the push. She wasn't celebrated like a lot of people who probably could have been less talented than she was.
Right. Yeah. And they both from Philly, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so it only makes sense. Yeah, man.
Okay, Sheldon, who comes next on your list?
Thank you for jogging my memory. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw Stephanie Mills in that mix.
Okay.
Stephanie Mills.
She was on mine too.
I'm gonna tell you, Stephanie Mills is, I guess one word I could say to describe her, I would say prodigy, because she's just the epitome of an R&B singer. Of course, she could do it all. She could sing up-tempo records. She could sing ballads. She could sing people's remakes. She could do gospel records. And she just very, very charismatic. I'll just say that. She's very charismatic in her singing. Even though she has that powerful voice, she doesn't overdo it. She can go ahead and sing like real sexy, and then she can go ahead and give you a dramatic delivery like on a song called Home. So I would say she's prodigy and prodigious and charismatic. So that's why I picked Stephanie Mills.
I became a fan of her, actually. Like, I always loved her music, but her as a person through the versus battle, where her and Shaka was on there, and just the way that she was and the way that her personality was, and just sweet and loving on her friend, like the whole time. It wasn't nothing catty. Like, you know, before that, a lot of the versus battles was like people, like, even if it wasn't for real, but just for show, they was like going at each other and like saying little catty remarks back and forth to each other. But that night was just like all love. And I was like, she's a hell of a lady for real. Like, not only did she have a hell of a voice, but she's a hell of a lady, seemed like. And even in the Plaid interviews, when she speak about her relationship with Michael Jackson and the stuff with her and Teddy and stuff like that, like, she's a legend, you know.
Oh, did she mention it? Because I know, did she mention that in this recent? Okay, I need to check that out.
Yeah, she talked about. I think that's the first segment of it. They asked her about that.
Okay, because
she's very pro-black too.
Yeah, definitely.
Very pro-black, very about the culture, man. She really stands up for R&B. She really does.
Yeah, Tammy Lucas, when I interviewed her, she said that was her first song that she wrote for Stephanie.
Really?
Real Love. So Tammy Lucas wrote,
Real Love.
Yeah, Tammy,
that was a beautiful record.
And Teddy produced it. Yeah. And she said she was because Tammy's a massive Michael Jackson fan. So because Stephanie was in The Wiz, it was like, the whole thing. Okay, I'm going to check that out. On my list, I'm going to add Faith Evans.
And I was going to say her too. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I think she had, when her first album, when she had As Soon As I Get Home and some of her ballads, she sounded sad, but there was just such you could feel the emotions in it. And I've seen, when she was just the receptionist at a label when Al B. Shaw heard her and sort of, gave her break and stuff. But so it's just Faith Evans. There's something about her voice. There's something about how she delivered. She wasn't trying to be like Mary, and she wasn't trying to, and I know they tried to get the whole weight thing under control, but she just said, look, let me just be myself. So I just, she was unique and so different. And so Faith Evans for me.
Yeah. She's another one with a serious pen too. Like if you check the credits of the stuff that she's written, like for other people and stuff. And did you ever hear the gospel song she did with Karen Clark? Because she's a big fan of like the Clark sisters, the gospel group, and a lot of her sound she developed from like listening to them also. So it's a duet with her and Karen Clark shared called Nothing Without You. Oh my goodness, man, them girls, the runs and the stuff they do on that song, man, between them two, crazy.
Yeah. I mean, because I'm sure we're going to pick some of the same ones, so that's fine. If she's going to be in your top 10, so you can move to the next one. Okay, you can pick them. You don't have to replace it.
Okay, fine. So you can go on to Brother Sheldon. Yeah, she definitely was on mine right there too.
I kind of been shuffling mine out, so I had to add somebody else and take someone out, and the person I added was Minnie Riperton.
You're just going all the way old school.
So for people who don't hold, classic vocalists, and what people don't realize is that when you look at a Mariah Carey being able to sing in that whisper key, Minnie Riperton was doing that. But the thing about it with Minnie Riperton is people know her from the song called Loving You. But she had some other songs that were really great. Memory Lane, Lover and Friend. If you go back and listen to her catalog is very understated. It's elegant, but it's very understated. And she would write songs, with her husband, and the songs were kind of like very visual. They were very cerebral. And when you listen to them, they weren't like conscious efforts to be like chart hits. They were very understated, and the songs kind of like sneak up on you. And they have this kind of sexiness to them, So she is on my list for that. It's more to her than the hit song Loving You. Obviously, her music has always been sampled and stuff like that. But Minnie Riperton, great. And I was about 11 years old when she died, so I didn't understand, like, of course, people who are older than me, they really were hurt when she passed away. So I didn't really understand the magnitude until like in the 90s when I started to really explore a catalog. And right around maybe the early 2000s or whatever, I bought a compilation, like a 2 CD compilation or something like that, man. And I was able to really just delve into the work. She was great, man.
Yeah.
Kind of abstract, cerebral, understated. Yeah. But still had a sexiness to her voice.
Inside My Love. Love and Perfect Angel, like you said, like them songs you could just zone out, just put them on, close your eyes, zone out. If you got company, it's even better. But even if you by yourself, you just put them songs on, just don't shut your eyes and just take you away to somewhere else for real.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, for my one, I'm gonna put Gladys Knight.
Oh yeah.
And she just always reminds me of. She always seems to have a smile when she sings, and not overdoing things, but almost being, just being able to interpret a song in with such passion, which is probably a lost art. And I know, yes, she did. She came out with the Pips, but it just seems like she was able to cross generations, especially for those of us who weren't brought up on Motown in the States. but just seeing her and just seeing her uniqueness, and then her fabulous relationship with Patti LaBelle, as well as Dionne Warwick. So yeah, Gladys Knight makes mine, and she's just, as I said, she just crosses generation and doesn't, and always seems to, as I said, sing with a smile.
Yeah. And she still sound good. Like,
yeah,
last recent stuff I heard of it, she still sound great, just like she sounded back in the day. I respect that wholeheartedly. Yes.
So what's up, Woody? What's next?
Man, gotta say Anita Baker.
Okay, yeah, she's on my list as well, so I can cross her out. Yeah.
I heard her, you know, like when I was a little kid. What they say, when I was a child, I thought as a child, like the Bible said. I used to get mad. Really, honestly, nobody had a fair chance because I was a super Michael Jackson fan when I was little. So when I would watch any video show and any video came on that wasn't Michael Jackson, I'd be like, oh man. And then I see her and she was singing all these slow ballads and stuff where I wanted to see somebody. I can't dance, but I wanted to see somebody else get up and dance. So I would get mad. But then one day, as I got older, I was in a hotel that played like the smooth jazz on. They had a channel that would play like the smooth jazz while you sleep or whatever. And she came on and I was like, oh my goodness. Like I feel so relaxed and so tranquil listening to her that like Brother Sheldon said, I went out and got a compilation. I said, I got to educate myself on her a little bit more. And it was crazy because the song Angel, you know, the, when it was, ooh, it was these guys that gave us this demo and they was rapping. And they was rapping about some real gangster stuff, but they had that playing in the back, like that sample playing. And so like when I heard it on her thing, I didn't know it was her. So I said, man, this the real song they got that from? Them guys, I'll be ashamed they still talking about somebody to that beautiful tune, man. But yeah, and I've heard her live. And she sounds just the same live, or if not better than she sounds recorded. And she's very, very conscientious. Like one song, the band started off on the wrong note or something. She turned around, excused herself to the audience, turned around like, look, y'all got to get this together. Let's do it again. Right in front of everybody. So she real conscientious about her stuff. So yeah, I respect Miss Anita, man.
She was always elegant. Just, you know, because I remember her giving you the best that I got, wearing a dress, you know, and she felt like she was a jazz singer who made a commercial, but she has such a distinct voice that doesn't rush. It doesn't feel like she doesn't try and rush when she's singing. Like, well, let me tell you what. It's just almost like I'm going to take my time and educate you and tell you a story. And you know, when Dal Sims was talking about, we wrote all these songs for Anita, and she says no, and so we gave them to Tony Braxton. I just think that she just, you know, she it wasn't as if she turned down the songs just like that. It's just like, look, she knows what works for her, the kinds of kind of melody, and she's not in a rush and stuff. So I don't know if there's she's probably would be my top 3, you know, ever, just because
she's definitely up there.
Yeah.
That Baby Come to Me that she did with James Ingram, you ever see that? It's on YouTube. They sung it live because, you know, they sang it with Patty Austin on the record. But it's a live video on YouTube where she came out in the middle of one of his concerts. He brought her out and they sung that together. Like, that video probably got a whole bunch of extra views because of me, because that's one of my go-tos when I'm in a funk or whatever. I go put that on and watch that and I feel better like almost instantly, you know?
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look at that. Oh, okay, I need to. Sheldon.
Okay, I'm gonna piggyback off for both of y'all, Gladys Knight and Anita Baker. Gladys Knight, briefly, I love her because she is probably best at singing a song and telling a story at the same time. The narration is really flawless because, you know, now we're in an era of solo artists, so we don't really look at groups, and we kind of separate her from the group. But if you ever seen videos of them, that's why you kind of almost have to keep them together, because if you ever saw them live, you see videos of them, it's an experience, because the guys could sing and dance and she could sing. It was just, the whole package was great. But when you look at her ability to sing songs, she could tell these stories, and it was almost like people singing country music. They tell stories, and it's very visual, very vivid. She had that warm type of feel with her voice. It was emotional. It was never really over the top. She can hit you over the top with a lot of the up-tempo stuff, but the ballads, very warm. The tone was great, but she could really tell the story. So anybody who, who never heard of Gladys Knight or never really listened to her music, I would say go back and listen to her catalog from 1972 to about 1974 to about 1977. And there's a period of time where they had four number one albums in a row. I mean, they were popular. I remember when I was young. So there's a soundtrack from a movie called Claudine with Diane Carroll, and Gladys Knight and the Pips are on the soundtrack. Listen to her singing, and you can see the range that she had. And then jumping over to Anita Baker, obviously great, elegant, understated. I could remember her coming out in 1983 with the Songstress album that had Angel 40 years ago. And I can remember being like 12 or 13 years old, and it was okay. It was like boring to me because I was into like up-tempo groups and things of that nature. But I'll tell you, 3 years later, when she came out with Rapture, I'm talking about the Rapture album in 86. That album was in everybody's house. Okay. And the great thing about that album is that when you have one producer producing every song on the album, it gives the album a flow and continuity that you have compared to having multiple producers on the album. But the songs were very understated, but they were just, every song was like a vocal signature. And the tone, the warmth, they were extremely romantic. And just she was the consummate professional. That's the best way for me to go ahead and put it. Understated, professional, great quiet storm singer. And like Woody said, she's like Luther Vandross, where she does not play when it comes to her stage show and in terms of her presentation. She's a professional in that way. Anita Baker's great, man.
Yeah. Okay. Woody, who comes next?
And I think she's very underrated, but the voice is undeniable. Shanice Wilson.
Ooh.
Shanice. Yeah, man. That turned down the lights. And then when she did the remake, you made me think of her brother Sheldon when you brought up Minnie Riperton, because like besides Mariah, she's like the only other person I heard hit that note and sustain it like that when singing I'm Loving You. Like she came in, like I don't know if it was the timing that she came in or what it was to do with it, that she wasn't bigger than she ended up being. I mean, I'm sure she had pretty good success, but I think she should have been way, way bigger than she was. But she had the voice for days, man. And she had the personality too. Like she just said so bubbly and nice to be around. I met her for like 5 seconds, her and her husband Flex, at a church that I went to out in Cali one time, and they just seemed like the nicest, sweetest people on earth, man. So they the type of people that you love to see win. And then they got the talent on top of it, because sometimes you got people that you like because they so cool. But then when you put them out there and their talent don't really speak for it, so he's like, oh man, like somebody you want to see winning a fight, and then you see him get beat. I'm like, oh man, I liked him. Well, I liked her, but she had the personality, and she got the talent to go right along with it. So yeah, she's definitely high up there in my book.
I mean,
her, right?
Yeah, and the reason why she didn't blow up is because her mom was her manager, and they didn't let the labels take advantage of her, and they and Matthew Knowles said the same thing about, he had to learn how to play the game with the labels to make sure that they both win. But most other parents who manage, if you don't learn how to play the game, compared to say like an Usher's mom, they just say, oh, you know too much, and we're not going to make much money from you, and there's no point pushing. So, in a nutshell, both from when she was at Arista and stuff, it was about the fact that the more they knew more, and they couldn't get advantage of her. And it's been sad too, the fact that she had, it's just sad how she just, she could have blown up, and she should have been at a high level, and she's had to fight hard for that.
But I say that all the time, man. Like all the time when people want to call somebody, not speaking to her, because she had definitely more than one hit, but when sometimes the people that's the one hit wonders, sometimes the people that still got their integrity. and still can go home and look at themselves in the mirror and know that they ain't do nothing crazy or have nothing crazy done to them in order to be more successful and have more hits. So I have nothing but respect for people like that that didn't make it or didn't get bigger because they knew what it was hitting for and they weren't willing to play the game or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, because So there's a lot of soul selling in order to make it big, and because she had protection of her mum and her aunt around her, they couldn't take advantage, and so the labels, it's always a sad thing when you hear that stuff, but she was constantly looks to be positive and stuff.
Yeah, put out some independent stuff. I'm sure somebody I know I copy.
Yeah, so she's been now she's trying to re-release her I think was it More Than a Woman, her last solo album that she put out. So she
funded. That's the one she funded on her own.
Yeah, she funded.
Right?
Yeah, so she's trying. She just put that back out again. I mean, if you listen to the interview with her, she spoke about depression, being dropped when she was pregnant. Wow. She was pregnant out of fate, and they like, oh yeah, well we're gonna drop you, and it's like what just like that. So they just So as I said. She has such a story, but she was always remained positive and stuff and stuff. So I'm going to try and re-release some of the interviews with her.
Yeah, I love to check them out again.
Yeah, Sheldon.
Yeah. When I look at her just really briefly with Shanice, she kind of reminds me of like the Stacey Latta song. They were young when they came out because people don't realize that Shanice came out like 87. And she probably was about maybe like 15 years old then. So at the time when she was coming out, you didn't have there wasn't a lane for young singers like that young coming out. So at that time, as she started to get older, I'm sorry, she got to get older. Now you started having younger artists, but like you said, her mom was a manager, but then a lot of the younger artists, I would say that when she hit 92, I think it was Your Smile, but then as time went on, the female singers, it was more of a sexy vibe. And so think about that. By that time, she's about 20 years old. So, she didn't fit and she didn't want to necessarily do that. Obviously, the management situation. And then it's just one of those type of things where it was just so many other female acts that were coming out. She just got kind of like left back. That momentum just like stopped, and it didn't help that the labels, they dropped her, man. But out of a lot of those female singers, I won't say any names, but singing wise, she's better than a whole lot of them.
Yeah,
technically, a whole lot of them. Yeah. It just wasn't a lane for her type of energy.
Yeah.
Wow, great singer.
Who's next on your list?
The next person on my list, I'm gonna go with Mariah Carey. And the reason I said what Mariah Carey is, obviously she has that whistle register. She kind of, as a young person, because remember, she comes out in 1990. So she's got to be about like 20, 21 years old or whatever. And she has that mature delivery because she's singing those adult-oriented ballads and whatnot. And it obviously was very good, very successful. But the thing that stood out for me was her versatility, and she can kind of veer into the hip hop R&B lane, and then she didn't look corny. It was just a seamless transition, and for me, it really extended her career. And that was the type of music that she liked anyway. So her versatility, but yet and still she can go back and sing, those ballads, and a lot of up and coming female singers, they really looked up to her. So even when you start looking at like later records that she had, and they're very trendy records that she had, they were still good. She didn't look like she was out of place singing those songs. So it was just like, and she wrote songs as well, but I would just say her versatility. She was able to transition with the times and still make quality music that you like to listen to. Go ahead.
Yeah, but I always wonder about that because I study business, and I'm one of those people that think if she had done what Celine Dion was doing and stayed in the pop market, because they try to market her as a white pop singer, because
Yes.
I didn't realize she was mixed race. You know?
Well, I'm gonna jump in. She
Yeah.
she was mixed race, and I hate to say that how you say it, but
Yeah.
they kind of hid that. They were marketing her as a white artist, and she was the antithesis to a Whitney Houston. So they were trying to market her in that Celine Dion realm back in the early 90s. But remember, she was much younger. So the hip hop thing was an extension of who she really was in terms of her taste in music. So she could have eventually went to the Celine Dion window, but she took a detour with the R&B music, you know?
Yeah, and I'm one of those people that think, you know, why be a Jodeci when you could be selling records like Boyz II Men kind of thing? And you know, so why
but understand, but think about it. She's selling records. She's already selling records. She's selling, go back and you look at the RRA website. She's selling 3, 4, 5 million copies of albums, man. You look at her catalog, she's killing the game. But understand that she's 22, 23. So by the time she comes out with the record with ODB in 94, she's 23 years old. She's 20, and she grew up in New York, been in the club scene, sang Brenda K. Starr, dance music, club music. So that's in her. So they were trying to put, they were creating a machine around her, but she kind of bucked the machine, but it worked out for her. She was able to do what Whitney Houston wasn't able to do.
Okay.
You know,
when she tried to do My Name
like,
Is Not Susan.
Well, not necessarily that, but she was able to kind of like change with the times and do contemporary R&B music, you know, whatever it was at the time. And Whitney didn't do, or Whitney couldn't do. So it was almost like her career, their careers were parallel. But when Whitney tried to kind of like make that transition, it was kind of almost like too late. And then she didn't live long enough, you know, and all the other things going on in her life. But, you know, Mariah Carey, the versatility.
Yeah.
But I see where you're going, because Celine Dion in that time period was like the standard. She was like a Barbra Streisand.
Yeah.
But remember, but when you look at Mariah, she's 22 years old.
Yeah,
so
and I think because she came out singing "Vision of Love," looking old. You know, she didn't come out looking like a 20-year-old. She looked like she was an old, because you're singing those kind of older songs and stuff. Okay. I'm going to put down Whitney Houston. I'm not sure if anyone else would have it down. I didn't enjoy the I Want to Dance With You movie. I thought it was such a whitewash film. It was almost as if we're going to take the best parts and just focus on that. You know, we saw Whitney when she was at her worst, and they made it look as if it wasn't an issue. So outside of that, outside of the movie and stuff, you know, they call her the voice, but there was a way she just delivered songs with a smile and with an energy that we weren't getting. It just felt like she was, think of like a Usain Bolt who broke the world record and pushed everyone in it and just had such a gap. It's almost like she came out and distanced herself from everyone else. And I think one of my favorite songs by her was He Gives Me Love, is it More Love? What's the name of that song?
All the Man.
Yeah,
that's from the Bodyguard soundtrack. Yeah.
No, that I think it was before that. All the Man That I Want to Be. I think that was before that. All the Man I Need. It was in that song, and even the video when she's on stage. I think that was her at her best. And it was a strange thing that she had to fight the fact that they thought she was a sellout and stuff. But you know, it's sad how, say, all the other things affected her life and stuff. But as a pure talent that just came out the bat, and you know, she was one of the first super artists that I didn't realize didn't write songs. I just assumed if you're singing, you write, but because the way she interprets what she was given just meant that I thought she wrote those things. So, but Whitney, I don't know if you guys had her on your list, but to me, she was I'm sure everyone would have the debates about who's number one and stuff, but for me, she was just a legend in her as a singer.
Oh yeah, she definitely up there. Certain people I ain't even put on my list because I know that somebody else was gonna say them. It's like would go without saying that name was gonna come up, but she definitely deserves to be there and definitely somewhere near the top because she was another one with just those effortless vocals. Like you go back, I'm a what we used to call in my era when we was growing up, you call you a hawk when you just be on something all day long. So it's like I'm a hawk for old YouTube stuff and like footage of live performances and stuff. And watching her sing like Saving All My Love for You when she first came out, like first album, singing on one of them live TV shows, David Letterman, or one of them, I don't know if it was him, but one of them type of shows, and just how effortless, it don't even seem like she was thinking about it. She just opened her mouth and them beautiful vocals just flew out, and just hit you upside the head, man. You can't not love Whitney for real.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what y'all think about Kelly Price?
Another one. Great vocalist.
Okay.
That second album, like the first one, I love his songs on there. I love the song she did with that Deron from 112 produced for her, and of course she had the hits with R. Kelly and them. But that second album from start to finish, I put that on that Mirror Mirror. You put that album on from start to finish, and it will take you on a journey. And then to hear her live, we did the BET celebration of gospel with her the year that like 2002, 2003, I think it was, or maybe a little bit before that. And like she would sing and open her mouth, and you would see, like, I ain't gonna say no names of nobody, but you would see like gospel singers that been singing, all their life start messing up because they was trying to match toe to toe with her. They like, they ain't gonna let this secular artist outdo me on this gospel program. So they start doing stuff to the point where their voices start cracking. Like, ew, never heard you like that. But it was like she just brought out that spirit out of people because she was just so good and so natural, like you said. And Sheldon, you made me think of her because you brought up Mariah. She used to sing background for Mariah.
Yes,
that lady, her voice is just one of a kind, man.
And you guys were label mates at Island Def Jam?
At Island Black Music, yep. And Island Def Jam, yep. Yep, okay. Surely was. I remember the first time we met her, I think it was, we did a Mother's Day program, and they had like us, her, and all the other label mates there. And that was the first time we heard her sing live. And just blown away from that day till now. I'm still blown away when I see her perform. So anytime I see her perform live.
Yeah, I mean, there's Roger Nelson just said Kiki Wyatt, if she was given the same care, she would have been as good as Kelly Price. Is that? Does anyone know Kiki Wyatt?
She definitely got the voice.
Kiki Wyatt was definitely, she was a great singer. Is a great singer. I think that it's just the fact that during that time, man, it was just so many artists and the labels and everything, but it was just so many artists during that time. And I don't want to use the word competitive, but when you have that many artists, it's kind of hard for everybody to kind of, I don't want to say reach the top, because when you go back to like in the 70s specifically, it was the same thing. You had so much talent. Everybody wasn't going to win Grammys. Everybody wasn't going to win awards, but the music was superior. It was great. So a lot of times people talk about, they didn't get their just due. It's just the fact that the industry at that time was just, I don't want to say oversaturated, but it was just had a lot of female singers, man. So that lane is a very narrow lane. But I would say one thing about her, the chemistry that she had with Avant, and I really wish they would have just done entire albums together. When I think about them, I think about the chemistry that Roberta Flack and Donny Hathaway had, or I think about the chemistry that Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell. They had a unique chemistry, and I wish, because that would have been a lane they could have created that would have set them apart from anybody else. Because they didn't really, you had people doing duets, people, features on the album. They were more like features. They were still duets, but when they were together, it was magic, man.
Yeah.
It was extremely magic. And they had the right producers.
Brown, take heed, take notes. Let's do what this brother said, man. Put that album out. We're by it.
Yes, absolutely. And they had the producer Steve Huff, who was great for both of them. And I just think that they would have put out a series of albums, they would have created a lane for themselves. Sometimes, we measure the artist success by the awards, by the amount of records sold. But with them, that would have just been the lane they would have had. They would have been an excellent concert draw, you know, to sell a lot of tickets and all of that. They had the drama, they had the chemistry, they had the theatrics, and they both could sing.
Yeah, I don't think labels were as creative and innovative and to see stuff like that. But yeah, so who's next for you, Sheldon?
I got Whitney Houston. The reason I say Whitney Houston, obviously, and just kind of piggyback on both of your comments. Whitney Houston is like a throwback. When you look at who she was, she represents the time when there was a machine that had a synergy in terms of putting artists out. And of course, her affiliation with Clive Davis is an extension of that, because what Clive Davis did is what a lot of record executives would do, is they would actually pick songs. That's how when you see artists in the 50s and 60s that weren't songwriters, they had songwriters who were great at creating material. So they would pick the best of the material, kind of like what Quincy Jones was doing. They picked the best of the material, they compile it, package it, and present it to the world. So when you look at her singing, the quality of those songs is because they took the time to really just build her career. And I remember like around like 1984, I was watching something. It might have been Entertainment Tonight or Entertainment Today, whatever, one of those type of shows in like 84. And they were talking about Whitney Houston, and she was sitting down with Jermaine Jackson. They said, because they were talking about Jermaine, and they said, well, he's got a new singer, Whitney Houston. I was like, who is this? Now, mind you, I'm like this is 84. So I'm about 15, 16. So I'm not really into like, a lot of ballads, but a year and a half later, man, she just really blew up. But she had she had great songs. Obviously, the whole package, the whole presentation, everything was just all in sync, the balance. A lot of songs that she was singing, people talk about the hits, but the album cuts on her song, on her CDs and albums, those songs were just as good. But I just think that when she came out, that pocket between, let's say, 85 and 86, she kind of rerouted the female lane in R&B, because prior to that, you were either a soul singer and you were maybe trying to veer into the pop lane, but Black female singers were kind of like peripheral. They just kept them to the side. You didn't really have, you were an R&B singer. That's what it was. But she kind of broke the mold to where she gave Black female singers a higher profile. Because at the time she's coming out, Gladys Knight, Aretha Franklin is still doing her thing. But a lot of those singers from that 60s and early 70s era, they had kind of peaked. So Whitney Houston brought a level of excitement, brought a level of attention to Black female singers, which caused other labels to go out and try to find their own. So now you got Atlantic going to go get a Mickey Howard, who's singing R&B and jazz. Columbia is going to get a Regina Bell. You know what I'm saying? So she kind of like kicked that off. So her and Anita Baker, like side by side, really it was a resurrection of the female R&B singer. But just to piggyback off what you said, Nnamdi, as far as there was a moment right around the 87 time period when she started being having the pop success. A lot of Black audiences were having issues with crossover artists really crossing over. Because at that point in time, you had a lot of white singers coming out, singing their version of R&B, and they were experiencing much more success. So I remember looking at Jet magazines and whatnot, and they were talking about how people were kind of backed away from Whitney right around 87, the second album, and and even though she was a great singer, it was more like she was pandering to the pop success, but it wasn't her. It was the label machine putting her in that direction. So by the time, 88 rolls around, she's showing up to the music awards and they're booing her and all of that, because they're looking at her like a sellout when 3 years ago, they really loved her. But I think they just kind of didn't understand the breadth of her talent. And I just think that, she was great, put out great albums or whatever, but Clive Davis wanted her to be a certain type of way. And maybe she kind of chafed underneath that. And then she also came out and was peaking at a time when the new generation of R&B singers, they were getting respect on the R&B side and they were selling records. They weren't selling records as much as she was, but she wanted that recognition from her people. So even though you had records like The Bodyguard and all that stuff like that were huge, but when she came back with My Love Is Your Love, 98, it was like she went back to her R&B vibe and she kind of got back where she was at. So I just think in terms of her, in terms of presentation, being prolific with her music sold a lot. It's just quality all the way around. And unfortunately, all the things that was going on behind the music really took a toll and kind of affected her momentum, you know. But at the end of the day, you got have Beyonce, you got this one and that one. But if you go back and look at physical records, not streaming, Whitney Houston, man, there's nobody surpasses Whitney Houston.
Yeah.
No one.
Next on my list is Sade. You know, she's always someone that we go neck to neck with when it comes to Anita Baker, but she's just the definition of just cool. You know, she doesn't do interviews. She does one album every 5 years or something like that, and then disappears. Very mysterious. But just like Anita, there's a distinction in how she sings, how she delivers. She doesn't seem to be in a rush. She doesn't seem to be flustered. And then she disappears. And it doesn't chase the limelight, and never has to expose herself just to get publicity or anything like that. It's almost as if somebody's like, look, I'm going to let my voice, my talent, my music speak for itself. And I'm not going to try and see, oh, this is popular. We need to do get some hip hop artists on it. We're just going to do our stuff. And I just don't, you know, she's maybe that mysterious part of her is probably what adds to it. But apart from her mesmerizing voice and her just enchanting music, and I'm proud that, you know, she's half Nigerian and British as well.
It's Philosophy Day.
Did you guys think? I mean, was she on your list as well, or what are your thoughts of Sade?
I like her a lot. I didn't even think of her when we were putting together a list and stuff.
Wow.
Definitely, I love her music. She's another one like Anita, like you said, that you could just put it on and it just take you somewhere else. Like you can relax and just be a chill day. You can just chill around the crib, just listen to Sade all day.
Yeah.
And she had that song Jezebel that had like some real serious lyrics that you could take and dissect and listen to, give you something to think about. And like you said, she don't follow the trends. Like she's her. And whatever ever she comes out as her. She don't make too many changes. She don't listen to probably labels like, oh, we need you to put this on, or the stylist like, oh, we need you to dress this way this time, or the way your hair this way. Like, look, man, all y'all get out of here. This works, and this is what I'm doing. And if it don't work, then what Whitney say? If I fail, if I succeed, at least I live as I believe. And I respect that. It seems like that's the philosophy that she goes by, and I respect that.
Yeah.
I didn't have her on my list, but because you brought her name up, I'm gonna have to take. I had some. I won't say the name, but I had somebody on my list, and I'm about to take them off. I'm gonna put Sade in there, and the reason why, because I totally, you know, just missed the boat on that one. But I'll put Sade on my list, and there's some other people. It's so many.
Yeah,
I'll say Sade is that. First of all, people have to realize that even though it's Sade is a band. The band is called Sade. It's named after her. But she's the front, like it's like Gladys Knight and the Pips. She's like the front person. She's the front woman of the group or whatever. And of course, but it's a singular thing. So when you see her, it's like Frankie Beverly and Maze. She's like that. She's like the, you know, the main event. And the reason why I like her music is that obviously it's very moody, very cerebral, and she has a lot of lyrics. Now, you gotta, just on a side note, you gotta salute the band, because the band contributes to the vibe of her songs that she sings. Now, when she sings them, it's very abstract. So she can sing about, like you said, Jezebel. She can sing about a song called, you know, Baby Father, you know, but the songs are not even all the hits, but the songs, they kind of like creep up on you. Their stories, it's almost like there's just poetry. You know, there's songs, but they're delivered in a created in a poetic way. So it gives her music a lot of timeliness to where it's not trendy, because you can listen to a Sade record and you might, it's so many of them, you might not be able to tell, especially if you're a young person who's new to Sade, you couldn't tell when it was recorded. It was timeless. When you put the Hills records, an album that she made in 1985, I think it was Diamond Life, that record could come out today. So when you look in terms of also her influence, it's poetry, it's like a lot of spoken word type, simple kind of borderlines that. So when you look at people like, whether it's Erykah Badu, Ella Mai, all these singers that have that spoken word type vibe or whatever, that's the energy that comes out of the Sade DNA. She's very sensual, very, very understated, poetical, very, very lyrical. Yeah. So that's my 10.
That's your 10. Woody, what about yourself? Who comes in? Who else is on your list?
Man, I had Olita Adams, just because her voice was so different. Like, I didn't know a lot of ladies that could go that deep in their register and like sing low like that, and it still sound feminine and pretty though, So I was definitely a big fan of her voice growing up, and still to this day.
I love Olita. Her first album, Circle of One. It was just like, it was very, very moody. The first record that she came out with, the album came out in 1990, and she had some records on that album that was like her voice was very clear. She told the stories, and I forgot the name of the song, but there's a lot of great songs in there, but she's very dramatic, and she tells a lot of stories, and then the music is very stripped down. A lot of piano, a lot of just bass, a lot of rhythm,
right? Just
bass drums, keys. Very good singer, very theatrical singer. Very underrated. Yes.
Okay.
I always go
Rhythm of Life. Rhythm of Life. You ever heard that song? You heard that?
I seen it. Like you mentioned, Jet Magazine. I never was allowed to listen to music, but it's like I would go and look at the titles and make my own song of what I thought it sounded like. But I need to listen to it now that you said it.
Go to YouTube and bring up her song, Rhythm of Life, and then she's singing off beats. And it's almost like a Sade vibe. There's another record she had, Don't Get Too Closer. That whole first album that she had, you got to run that. You'll see.
I sure am. As we get off, that's going to be my homework assignment. I appreciate it.
Everybody knows Get Here, but you got to go back to 90, the first album.
Yeah, and I know it from the gospel song she did, that Worthy is the Lamb, that she did like a couple years into that. Yeah, I just like, her voice does something. Yeah.
And on the UK side, Nnamdi, she started out as a background singer for the UK group Tears for Fears in the 80s.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. She was a background singer.
I didn't know
that. Just to round up my list, because I had two more left on mine. One of them is, and I actually cemented her when I just listened to her sophomore album, Lauryn Hill.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If you listen to her Unplugged album, MTV Unplugged, I don't know if you guys have listened to it. I mean,
just talking about that in the barbershop yesterday. Yeah.
She dropped so much knowledge and on that album that I think it was just almost like she just went into a treasure chest and just dropped that knowledge. And I think it went over most people's heads, but she was just breaking down wisdom and her raw emotion. And I think she just has so much that she's been dealing with that it has affected her career as a singer. But, she, apart from the two Fuji albums she came out with, and then her debut album, and then her follow-up album, she's just, she just has so much emotion in her voice when she's singing and when she's crafting her stuff. But I just think that she's just she just couldn't deal. It just almost like so much, and she just didn't have that emotion. That she just has so much and stuff. So, but I just love her, love what she has to do. I don't like the drama behind things, showing up 10 hours late to a show and all that stuff. But when she's there, when she delivers, the emotion she carries, especially if, as I said, anyone watching and listening, check out her MTV Unplugged album, and that's the rawness of Lauryn Hill.
Yeah,
And that album. Go ahead, brother. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, bro. I was just gonna say that she, like she was one of them artists that I put in the same category of Tupac. But I was never like a huge fan of Tupac's music. It's certain songs that I definitely rock to, but I was never a huge fan of his music. I just love to hear him talk. Like the stuff he was saying in interviews and stuff like that. And like Lauryn, I was a big fan of her music, but I also just love to hear her talk. Like when she would do the interviews and stuff, when she spoke in front of that university, it's on YouTube. She was talking about when we asked the Lord to use you, like you don't get to pick how he used you. Like everybody want to be glamorous and go to the Grammys and win awards with a fly suit or a pretty dress or something, but he might use you in a serving position where you serving other people or you down and out, appear to be down and out. So it's like you can't choose how he uses you for real. Like stuff like that. His nuggets that she would drop, and she was dropping these on like young college students, telling them the importance of being themselves and stuff like that. And then to have that translate onto her album, like the Miseducation, she had songs with messages like that, even on there. So, and then to go to that Unplugged, like you said, that Mystery of Iniquity. Oh my goodness.
Adam Lives in Theory. Oh, Jerusalem. I mean, she just had them.
How you gonna win if you ain't right within?
Lauryn Hill was dope. Lauryn Hill had what I like to call ancestral recall, because if you go back and listen to the Fuji records leading into the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, there's a lot of references from music of the past. She was a student of music of the past. She studied a lot of records, because understand, you got to remember when the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill comes out, she's still like really super young. She's like maybe 23 years old. Wow. So she's younger than Michael Jackson was at the time Michael Jackson put out Thriller. Michael Jackson was 25. She was younger than that. So, of course, all the industry stuff going on behind the scenes. But when you look at the music, he was a student of music. So if you go back, and I actually wrote a piece about her Miseducation. I compared it to Songs of the Key in Life in terms of things that she was actually talking about. But she had a ancestral recall. She could pull energy from other records that had come out in the past, and she would throw them in her music. If you listen to like Fuji, she's singing Tina Marie, Ooh La La. Right. And that's just one general example. But when you look at the Unplugged album, I think it was kind of before its time, because people didn't really digest it, because hip hop and R&B was super popular. Yeah. So for her to do, she was coming out like she was Tracy Chapman.
Yeah.
She was doing a Tracy Chapman thing, and it was just out of step for what was out in the industry at the time,
Yeah. Right. Is your list finished, Sheldon?
I'm done. Yeah.
Yeah. What about yourself, Woody? Do you...
Yeah, I'm good. I just wanted to put in an honorable mention, man. Somebody who's one of my favorites, and I was happy. I saw her. She did a Tiny Desk, and I was just happy to see that she's still out there singing.
Who's that?
Nicole Ray.
Oh,
she used to be under
Missy.
Oh
yeah.
Her voice is everything too, man. Just low key, underrated, very underrated, but she's super dope. Yeah.
Okay.
And as a writer and a singer, for real.
Okay. Yeah. So we can go to just before we're about to go to our male artists. Chris has said that April Showers is a great song. Both Chris and Robert, big fans of
thank you.
of April Showers and stuff. Yeah,
I made that song for a birthday or Valentine's Day gift for my ex-girlfriend, because I ain't had no money to get her a present. So I got my got a note from the group to go in. I sung and he played and we recorded it. And then the lady at the label was like, you know what? Everybody say y'all sound like Jodeci. This song don't sound like nobody. So this need to go on y'all album, because it wasn't made to go on the album. It was just going to be a birthday present. And she was like, that need to go on the album just to show that y'all can make music that don't sound like Jodeci. So
that's a good story.
Glad you like it. Thank you.
Okay. So right now, guys, we've just finished our top 10 female artists, and as I said, favorite. So it wasn't like the greatest; it was our favorite. Right. This is going to be I think easier for me, because I could easily find 10 guys. So, and I'm sure it's probably going to be the more diverse, because apart from probably one or two people, I'm sure we'll be more diverse. So, would you who would make your top 10 male artists?
Man, I gotta say number one first, man, Stevie Wonder. I learned so much. Like when I was going to church when I was a little boy, I wasn't allowed to listen to music that wasn't church music. So I listened to Daryl Coley and I listened to my big cousin Ernest. And my cousin Ernest had like a similar tone like Stevie. And to me, Daryl Coley and Stevie have some tones in common as well. So by the time I finally was able, when I turned like 13, 14, my mom started letting me use my allowance to buy whatever I wanted to buy. So I bought Stevie Wonder because even through church, people always say, you sound like Stevie Wonder. I'm like, I don't know how Stevie Wonder sound. So then when I finally got to listen to him and understood what they were saying, but it's like, I basically used him as a teacher to teach me how to use my instrument. Cause I'm like, if y'all saying I have a similar tone, then let me try to do this like what he's doing. Let me try to do that. Then even like with the writing, I learned how to write from a golden book. The songs that was on the little golden book stories and stuff like that. Some of them had like some of them similar melodies. So it's like, man, he been doing the same stuff all these years. So he became like informally, because I only met him like twice, but like he was like my mentor through his music, teaching me how to use like my gifts and talents a little bit better. So gotta give him that credit. And to this day, he still sound like, I'm still amazed when I hear him sing. Like he just did the Grammys with Wanye's sons.
Yeah.
And even to this day, every time he opens his mouth, I'm just like flabbergasted at this, like at his pen and his voice. So yeah, he's definitely top tier in mine for real.
Yeah, and I have to confess to everyone that I'm not. Yeah, even I told Sheldon this earlier. I'm not a massive Stevie fan, and I think I only liked when he came out with that album where he had Part-Time Lover and
In Square Circle. In Square Circle.
Right.
Yeah, so that was the album that I sort of got introduced to him when I was in Nigeria, and because that was more of the sort of black when when in the 80s when black music and pop music, and they were all sort of, there was no real divide. So that was the album that I first, Happy Birthday to You and all those types of songs. They weren't really R&B, they were more popish and stuff, and I loved that version of Stevie. So everyone.
Nnamdi,
Pardon?
what's crazy is that the second time I met him and really actually got to have a conversation with him, I was in Nigeria. Well, I think I was in Nigeria because we came over for Nelson Mandela. When Nelson Mandela first came home, He had like 2 celebrations, and both of those celebrations, he had us, Shaka Khan, and he had Stevie, he had what's his name? Kenny Lattimore. It was like a bunch of entertainers that he loved, and then those his grandchildren loved. And that's why I still got a picture of all of us standing in Nelson Mandela's backyard.
My goodness.
Yeah.
My goodness. Sheldon, who's next for you?
Okay, well, I'm gonna go ahead and continue the Stevie Wonder train.
Okay.
Stevie Wonder had a churchy style, yet it was controlled. And the type of the singing that he was doing, and from being a gospel singer, Woody, there's a type of vocal approach that the singers had that they applied to singing and records. It's like a melisma. It's like a run, the runs. And that was his thing. It was churchy, yet it was controlled. But when Stevie Wonder sang, it was very versatile. He could be introspective, he could be abstract, he could be political, he could be spiritual and romantic. And he filtered all these things into a commercial style that was very successful. Now keep in mind that this guy, he's a singer, especially when he's in his peak in the 70s, going into the 80s, but in the 70s, is that like right now we're drawn to singers who are visual. They could sing, they could dance, they put on these performances, but he moved the way we are moved by like a Beyonce and people like that, Michael Jackson performing. People will move by him being able to sing. And when his songs that he sang, he gave you lyrical and conceptual. He threw lyrical, conceptual curveballs in his vocal presentation. Like he had a song he sang in 3 languages. The first verse was in Zulu, Swahili.
Yep.
Second verse was in Spanish. Second verse is in English. So he could do this all at once, and he could go from singing about his baby, "Isn't She Lovely?" Then he could sing about his childhood, "I Wish." And then he could call out crooked politicians on songs like "You Ain't Done Nothing." And then he could do kind of like cheesy romance songs like "I Just Called to Say I Love You." He could throw you a curveball with "Happy Birthday." And like you said, the N Square Circle record where they had Hard Time Lover with Luther Vandross singing on the background, and
Wow, I
he can
didn't realize.
sing. That's that da 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 da. That's Luther Vandross,
Sure
and then
enough.
he's singing Overjoyed. These records, man, it's just like he could take all of these different type of concepts and he could turn them into hits. And then most importantly is that his DNA is in a lot of new jack, swing, hip hop, R&B, neo soul singers. So if you listen to Aaron Hall, you hear bits of KC, Cisco, Glenn Lewis, you know, even Charlie Wilson cites him as one of his 3 vocal inspirations. So anybody who's not really into Stevie Wonder, look up look up Lately, look up Sir Duke, look up Ribbon in the Sky, you know, those type of songs, and you'll kind of see the genius that he has. So think about it. When you talked about the Grammys, all the contemporary artists are on the Grammys, and this guy's been out for like 50 years. And he's still rocking the house.
Okay.
Okay.
And every celebrity that passed away, all of them must request him to sing at their funerals because he be at all of them. It don't matter who they are, how big a star they were, or how big a dignitary or whatever. Uncle Stevie is gonna be right there, and he's going to not fill the whole house. And that matter of fact, when he sung "I Won't Complain" at Luther Vandross' funeral, I retired that song from my repertoire because I had never heard it sung like that before. I said, I ain't singing like that. I quit. He sung, and that's supposed to be, I mean, it was a funeral. We all there with sad emotions. I'm watching on YouTube with sad emotions, but when he sung that, oh my goodness, man.
His durability, man, is really underrated. This guy could get on stage and he could give you like 2 hours. Like when they used to have the Budweiser Superfest in the early 80s, he would come in and the Budweiser Superfest would start at a certain time, and it would roll on to like 2 o'clock in the morning. And Stevie Wonder used to close the Budweiser Superfest. He'd come on at midnight. And one time he was in St. Louis, and this is where Donny Hathaway was from. And he did a dedication to Donny Hathaway. He did a lot of Donny Hathaway songs. Then he rolled into his catalog, and he stayed on stage for 2 hours just rocking.
Wow.
I'd have loved to have been there, bro. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, well, I'm going to move on to the next one so that we could, and I'm going to throw, I don't know if you guys know Michael McDonald.
Of course.
Yes. Yes. Of course. Yes.
So, he, you know, and it may come as a surprise, like, well, but there's such, I don't know, when we talk about a warmth, you know, I was a big fan of Kenny Rogers as well, but when Michael sang, it wasn't like, okay, I want to, it wasn't an Elvis Black Expectation kind of thing. It was as if this is how he was born. This is how he sings, whether he's duetting with Patti, whether he's singing on his own. It just felt like he was a soul singer, not chasing, not trying to be cool with it, but just this is how he was. And it's just, you know, as I mentioned, I've said it a number of times when I talk about singers and feeling a warmth, a believability in their vocals. And Michael was one of those. And that was the beautiful thing about the 80s, was the fact that there was very little separation between the music. I mean, you know, it wasn't, you know, you didn't get the, you know, you probably got funk bands, and you had your bands like Earth, Wind and Fire and stuff like that. But in general, a lot of our singers were singing similar music, so they could get away with it. So Michael McDonald is definitely in my top 10.
Michael McDonald is dope. I'm gonna tell you. He started out, he was singing with rock, I'm gonna say rock groups, but they were like pop groups or whatever. And he was singing background, Steely Dan. He was singing with Steely Dan. He was like writing songs in the background and all of that. And then he joined the Doobie Brothers in the 70s. And the Doobie Brothers were like a rock band, and they had like this gritty, it wasn't like super hard rock, but it was like a mix of like country, rock, and it was cool music. And then when he came in, he kind of took them into another direction that really gave them their biggest success, because the music started to become more polished. he had a very unique voice. So if you go back and listen to a lot of songs he sang with the Doobie Brothers, very good. And he kind of took them into a situation where now they started to become like a pop group. But his voice, man, the NBA used one of the songs that he sang with the Doobie Brothers. That was their theme song. This is like back in 1981, 82. Wow. I had to send you the joint. But Michael McDonald is great. And of course, he started venturing on the R&B side on my own. And there's a record he sang with an artist named Kenny Loggins called This Is It. You ever heard of that?
Yes,
you
sir.
Ever heard of that, Nnamdi? Go back and listen to this. Go back and listen to This Is It. He's singing the chorus and he's singing the background. It's called This Is It by Kenny Loggins. Michael McDonald he's the truth, man. No joke.
He's cold. Crazy. I was just watching a thing about him and his influence on like even modern music. It was like a history piece, like where he started, all the stuff you just mentioned, and then talking about like his influence on even people of today. Like there's an artist called Thundercat that does something really dope. And he just did something with him recently, so he's still going. Doobie Brothers, are they still on tour? I know they were on tour at the end of last year.
They're still on tour. Yeah, they still together, different fragments of the group. But Michael McDonald, man, is no joke in terms of his singing, songwriting, and then of course he had a unique, distinctive voice. You know, a lot of comedians and whatnot, they used to make jokes because it's like he could sing and not move his lips. Like Anita Baker, they had that same type of style. They could sing and it's like they would move their mouth, but you can hear the sounds coming out. But Michael McDonald's he's no joke.
Yeah, that was a good call.
Okay, good. What's next for you then, Woody?
And Brother Sheldon said and mentioned him when we was talking about Stevie, Donny Hathaway. Wow. It's only natural to put him in there too, man. Donny Hathaway, they said he went to Howard University and they told him it wasn't nothing else that they could teach him. Because he was just that cold already, you know, like just naturally just blessed and gifted. His tone so rich. And when he sing, he just almost paralyzing. Like you gotta sit still and listen to what he got to say for real. You know, and it was no theatrics back in them days or nothing with him. When I see him on the Flip Wilson show performing in different shows, nothing theatric like we were talking about earlier, where though now everybody got the bells and whistles and the big lights and dancers all dancing around and all that, or you gotta look like a model and pull your shirt up and show your stomach and all that stuff. He wasn't doing none of that. He was sitting at the piano, singing and playing, and it captivated us just that same way. And to this day, if I put on some Donny, I'm still captivated that same way. So much respect to you, sir.
Okay, Sheldon.
He's on my list too. Donny Hathaway was anti-commercial, but still influential. And you know, when I created my list, I looked at all the things I liked about him, but also their impact. So when you look at what Donny Hathaway, what made him unique, is he shifted the style of singing away from the rough singing style, like people like Wilson Pickett, Otis Redding. They had that Stax. They had that gritty sound. You know, Donny Hathaway comes out with his first record, Everything Is Everything, which is what Lauryn Hill got the title of one of her songs from. It came from his album in 1970. So when he comes out, he kind of changes the game in terms of singing. Now, once again, Charlie Wilson cites him as one of the 3 singers that he modeled his style after. So, and then Donny Hathaway's DNA is in Aaron Hall. His DNA is in R. Kelly. His DNA is in Music Soul Child. So when you look in terms of the New Jack Swing style of singing that Aaron Hall kind of ushered in, that a lot of other young singers kind of follow, Donny Hathaway broke that chain, because now you see people like I said, Music Soul Child doing his version of what Donny Hathaway was doing. And then, of course, when you look at Donny Hathaway singing, 90% of the songs that he sang were covers, but he made them his own. So a lot of songs you hear him sing, he didn't write, because back in the 70s, R&B and rock groups and everybody, they were doing each other's records. They were doing remakes. So they were doing each other's records.
And made them hits. He did them Carpenter songs and stuff, and the songs by Burt Bacharach and them. And made them hits in a whole nother way. So you're right about that. A lot of covers.
So when you look at, he took gospel, rock, and soul songs recorded by other people, and he filtered into his own style. His style was very elegant. It was very sophisticated. So he kind of ushered in that era of sophisticated soul that people would kind of follow after, Marvin Gaye and all of that. But it just so happened that he didn't. His songs was his style was so eclectic that it was like it weren't commercial. So you had to either be a Donny Hathaway fan or you weren't one.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one of the things that kind of plagued his career, because he used to always wonder, why don't they love me like Stevie? He used to say that because Stevie Wonder because Stevie Wonder, if you listen to Stevie Wonder before 1971 and you listen to Stevie Wonder after 1971, Stevie Wonder was doing the Motown records that we kind of, the churchy, piano driven or whatever, bouncy records. But what happened was Donny Hathaway came out in 1970. Next thing you know, Stevie Wonder comes out in 1971, Music of My Mind, 1972, Talking Book. So that whole vibe that we hear Stevie was doing, he took what Donny was able to do, and Stevie was able to filter it into a commercial type of vibe, that was more successful than what Donny Hathaway was doing. But Donny Hathaway had hits, but they were modest hits. So he was a modest singer. And I could remember being like, when he committed suicide in 1979, I was like 11 years old. And I didn't understand why the music world, especially a lot of Black singers who were in their 30s and 40s at the time, they were hurt because they looked at him. They respected his talent. And like you said, Woody, is that during the time where everybody got the shirt off and this, that, and other, he just got at the piano and he sang. So anybody who don't know Donny Hathaway, check out A Song for You, check out This Christmas, check out a song, The Closer I Get to You. Those three records, and I kind of give you an introduction on how good this guy really, really was. Is exactly.
Okay, I'm gonna go to my next one, and Alexander O'Neal.
Oh man, that's dope. I was thinking of him too earlier.
I mean, he doesn't look like a singer. I mean, he looks, but I don't know if his partnership with Jimmy and Terry, but having a song like You Have Faith and Criticize, and then his stuff with Sheldon, he just had a different voice and a way of delivering that just was like mesmerizing. And he was massive here in Europe. He was massive in Nigeria, and and of course massive around the States. It's just, as I said, I don't know if he had come out in the 90s, whether he would have gotten a record deal, just because there was very much image focus. But I'm very glad that during the 80s, when he came out, they focused on the voice and the talent, and he had it in abundance.
Well, I want to just jump in there with Alexander O'Neal. I love him too. He's not on my list, but I just want to throw something in there. Is that when Alexander O'Neal came out in 1985, came out with an album called Innocent. And at that time, Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, they were getting their whole Flight Time thing together. They were producing. And one of the things that made him really good was that the Jam and Lewis connection, he knew them from years back prior. They gave him a signature sound. And he was like an update of a Teddy Pendergrass, because he could do ballads and he could do up-tempo records. And he was comfortable with doing both. It sounded really good. So there are records like Alexander O'Neal did, like If You Were Here Tonight. There's another one. It's just so many. Obviously, Hearsay is the album that came out later in 87 that really sealed his legend. And like you said, Alexander O'Neal was the first artist to sell out the Hammersmith Odeon like 7 times in a row. That's like going to Madison Square Garden in New York and you selling out an entire week. The UK cats, they loved Alex. He was bigger. His album Hearsay went gold in America, but it went like multi-platinum in the UK, and it spun off a lot of hits. And his career trickled into the 90s, but obviously a lot of personal issues kind of like set him back. But he came in there in an era where male vocalists, Luther Vandross, Freddie Jackson, so it was a lane for those guys. But his music was very animated, and he had a presence about him. Yeah. He'd sing and he'd be sweating and everything. Like Barry White, he had a handkerchief and whatever. But Alexander O'Neal, plus, and also he had the masculine image and the masculine voice at a time when a lot of R&B singers had like light falsetto and tenor voices. He had that masculinity. But yeah, man, from 85 till about 92, 93, great. That was his run. Great music.
Who's next?
And like he was going, I mean, like you was saying, man, like you just said, I was thinking the same thing. Like Alexander just seemed like a real one. You know, like I seen an interview where they was saying he was supposed to be the lead singer, I think, for the Time or one of them.
Yeah, he was.
Prince was doing.
Give
And
me
he
my
said when he
money.
asked him
Yeah.
how much he was getting paid, and he told him what he said, nah, never mind. You know, and it take a lot of integrity to walk away from that, because some people just would have did it just for the fame of it, or just to be in the spotlight, or just to be in that, you know, in that whole inner working. So for him to say, never mind, I want my money, he got my respect right there, man.
No,
Not
but
to mention
actually,
his degree voice.
if you listen to Jimmy Jam on Questlove, he says Alexandra first ordered a massive steak and everything, and he gave them conditions before he gave Prince conditions. Like, yeah, this is what I'm going to need.
Gotta have this.
Yeah, I'm going to have that.
Yeah.
And Prince was like, okay, no, you've not even, there's nothing. Yeah, so he
Prince
just
wasn't
thought,
trying to hear it, huh?
yeah, Prince wasn't. So that's when Morris
That's
took
good.
over and stuff. But it worked out
Right,
best
right.
because I think
Oh, definitely worked
he
out.
needed, yeah.
Yeah,
But
Morris is,
Jimmy and
man,
Terry
one
had
of my
to
favorites.
come back for him after they got signed with Clarence and
Yes,
got him back. But yeah, he had to learn how to eat humble pie by that time.
Man, goodness gracious.
And the thing about it, when he came out with his album, he was 30 years old. So 30 years old is old for now.
Oh,
But he
right,
was
yeah.
30 years old when he came out with his first album. So he had been
Mhm.
trying to do this for a long time. So yeah,
Yeah.
Right.
great singer.
Yeah, definitely.
Who's next on the list?
For me,
Yeah.
Freddie Jackson, man. You
Oh,
just mentioned
Freddie.
him, Brother Sheldon. I was sitting there thinking of him the whole time. Freddie Jackson, man. He's one that I remember going to get my hair cut and Soul Train being on in the barbershop and stuff, and everybody just, his music just remind me of a good time. Just feel good music. And then the older I got, that I could really appreciate his vocals. Another one, just effortless. Like that dude just opened his mouth and just flow out with all types of runs and riffs and stuff like that. Just cold, man. I remember there's a video of him. I think it was like Live Aid or one of them big festivals that they had where it's like in a stadium, and he was singing Jam Tonight. When he came out there, like the runs and stuff he was doing, he started off way up in the stratosphere with the high range and register, and just took everybody in that whole arena to church. And I was like, man, that brother can sing, man. And I know Luther gonna end up in here at some point too, but yeah, man, them two brothers, man, definitely can't deny them vocals.
Yeah.
And just to jump in with, just to piggyback what you said about Freddie, when Freddie Jackson came out, there's a period of time when every Freddie Jackson record was like #1.
Yep.
He had about like 7 #1 records in a row. It was just like, I mean, he was on the R&B side, he was unstoppable, man. You're talking about the albums he put out between 1985 and 1990. So that was like 3 albums. And he had #1 records, at least 3 #1 records off of on each album. So when you look at who he was, he came along and he had the music that he had, it had the drum machine. So it was kind of like in the pocket of what the music was at the time. You know, it was less polished than like a Luther Vandross record. So Freddie Jackson had a really percussive style. It was like it was like you had sugar and cream. You know, you have you have something that's like liquid. You're cooking with something. Let's say you got flour and then you got like butter or oil that can mix it together to make it like a gravy. That's how it was with Freddie Jackson. He had the sweet sound with the voice, and he had like a gritty situation with the drums. Nice. It was like an aggressive sound with the 808 drum machines and all. Like people talk about singing over beats. Freddie Jackson was kind of almost doing that in like the mid 80s, man. And people really took to him. And then when he came out, like you said, with Jam Tonight, and to anybody that was like between 85 and 90, when he comes out in 85, if anybody that's 25 years and older, man, Freddie Jackson was in their pocket. They loved him, man. Freddie Jackson, he dominated radio. It was like it was almost like Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston. When Mariah Carey comes out, they're like, oh my God, like she's coming, you know, she's the next one. Like she's gonna come and take over. That's how it was with the Freddie and the Luther. Of course, thankfully for them, they didn't have that catty competition. Luther loved Freddie, Freddie loved Luther.
Right.
So to piggyback off of that, my next one is Teddy Pendergrass.
I knew where you're going to bring him in.
My next one is Teddy Pendergrass. And Teddy Pendergrass, when you think of like an Alexander O'Neal, that's how Teddy Pendergrass was. This guy, young guy, powerful voice. He could sing everything. He could sing. He kind of opened the door for a lot of R&B singers to leave groups and go solo. So when you look at Lionel Richie and Jeffrey Osborne and people like that, they left their groups. It kind of the same way what Whitney Houston did to open the lane up for female R&B singers, the next generation. That's kind of what Teddy did, because Teddy came after people like Isaac Hayes and David Ruffin, and that was like before him. He comes out where they're out, and he goes solo. You know, comes out of the Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes thing, and he opens the door. He do message songs, up-tempo songs. He could do romantic ballads. He had a masculine approach to singing that attracted male fans and female fans. Males wanted to be him. Females wanted to be with him. On his records, he gave you a lot of theater in his records, very melodramatic. But at the same time, if you listen to some of his records he did with Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, he could freestyle a monologue. It's like he could preach. He could preach on the record. And he could give you churchy ad-libs and whatnot. And it was just like, it's almost like before videos and all of that, he's the main guy. Everybody remembers Luther Vandross, but there's a pocket of time where Teddy is like, he didn't sell like 4 or 5 million, but at the time he was out, he sold 5 platinum albums in a row when everybody else was on gold. Nobody was doing what he was doing. Nobody had the success that he had, and his accident kind of like cut his momentum off. But when you look in terms of who he was, very influential. Look at Love TKO, Wake Up Everybody, Be For Real, Close the Door, Come Go With Me, Turn Out the Lights. You know, those records, man, are really, really good. People kind of forget about him because he you know, he was paralyzed and the career kind of went in a different direction. But if you ask people who were listening to him who were alive, anybody that's like 50 years old and older, maybe 60 or 70, they will tell you he was the man.
Yeah. Didn't he have like some jeans? He had his own line of jeans that the woman was
I'm gonna
wearing.
tell you something. Like Teddy had I remember the Teddy jeans. He had the Teddy jeans with the commercial. He was doing things. He was going into a space that R&B singers weren't really going to, and he was going into that space. And the accident, ladies only shows. You know, you're talking about. And I'm gonna give you,
man. Yeah.
And there's one quick story. Janet Jackson talks about her being. Janet Jackson was born in 1965, so at the time Teddy Pendergrass is coming out, she's like maybe 15, and she talks about looking at a Teddy Pendergrass album cover, looking at his face and being mesmerized by how he looked.
That's dope.
You know, he just had Teddy was dope, man. You know, very dope.
Okay, you've got Teddy, David Ruffin.
Okay.
David Ruffin from the Temptations. They don't make singers. When they say they don't make them like they used to, and there's a pain, there's a hurt, there's a believability in when he led the Temptations. And one of my favorite movies is the Temptations movie. And just watching them reenact those things, but his voice, those are very raw, emotional voices. And David was just same sort of thing. People who have a lot of pain and hurt seem to be able to convey a message, and so David Ruffin from the Temptations.
David is the man.
Woody, who's next for you?
Man, let me see. Let me think. Goodness. He said so many good ones, man. Shoot, Luther.
Okay, yeah, we all have Luther.
Man, it's only right. We said Freddie, we gotta put Luther there too, man.
Yeah, Luther's
another effortless one. Like it's just his voice was so smooth. Like it had a raspy undertone to it that I would hear some raspiness sometimes. But it was just so smooth and seamless, his vocals. And like Brother Sheldon said earlier, like a consummate professional, man. Like when I hear about stories about like behind the scenes stuff and stuff like that, and things that he would do. And then like I actually got the chance to meet him, and he was super nice.
Wow.
So it's just like I met him for 5 seconds. It wasn't
okay. It wasn't
nothing important. Like I was coming out of the Hit Factory, and it was me and my buddy Scola, who was on with us for a minute. We were coming out the Hit Factory working on my gospel album, and he held the door for us, and we were looking like that. Looked like, we looked at each other like, yo, is that? Because he was so regular and so humble, looking like he just looked like regular. We were just like, is that? And he was like, yes, it is. Yes, it is. And we were like, all right, well, can we get a picture? And he sat and let us snap a picture with him real quick and went on his way. So it's like, it's so nice when you meet, because people always say never meet your heroes. And it's so, sometimes you meet people and it makes you not even a fan of their art or their craft anymore because they were so nasty or so mean or just whatever the case may be. So it just put the icing on the cake, how much I already was a fan of his music, to meet him and actually to be a nice guy, But
yeah, I mean, when you do, I think there's A House Is Not a Home is one of my top 5 songs ever. And there is almost like almost like with Whitney, I do think that vocally, I don't know if I prefer anyone as good as Luther, just because of how he delivers a song with a passion that you can't teach.
Right.
You just hear him sing, and there is and maybe the same thing. There's a lot about his background that back in when he was singing, he just probably wasn't able to express as if he came out today. But there seems to be that sense of pain, loss of fear, and everything wrapped in how he delivers the message. And I always remember when I used to watch American Idol, and they used to tell singers, "Oh, make it believable." I don't sing, so I never understood. And when Elder Bard was saying that he was trying to sing like his brother Bobby, and Bobby says, "I don't do that," and he was crying and started to sing. He says, "See, that's it. You've got the emotion." Yep. And for non-singers like ourselves, it's hard to relate. But when you hear Luther, you feel as if he doesn't just sing a song. He listens to it, interprets it, and then sings it as it was supposed to be sung.
He said one time before he sung, it was on 106 in Park. He said, "I want y'all to feel this all in your DNA." And the thing, he's another one like we was talking about that he didn't do no whole bunch of dancing. He was like one of the only people I ever saw come on Soul Train where everybody dancing, or he at least got somebody dancing behind him or around him, and just come there and stand flat-footed at the microphone and sing and still move the crowd. So when you could do that, you all right with me, because I ain't no dancer, no mover around.
Yeah.
So it's like them people like that, those are my real heroes that I look up to. Like you singing, and it's just like we still like waiting, like how people will be waiting on the next dance step. You waiting on that next run or that next note or that next whatever he goes. We waiting on that, So it's like when he made Arsenio Hall, had his, when he went off the air for the first time he was on with his talk show. Yeah. He came out and sung "If Only for One Night." And by the time he finished singing, Arsenio Hall was in the floor, like literally in the floor.
I remember seeing that.
His feet there. I'm like, man, you could do that. Make a grown man fall down like that by you singing, like, man, you doing something serious, man.
That's a powerful voice. That's somebody who has an instrument and a gift.
And like Brother Sheldon said, like most singers that have gifts like that come from church and had that thing crafted and sculpted in church. But I saw an interview called Journeys in Black that was on BET a long time ago. And he said that he wasn't like church trained for real. Like he said he just used to sing, get up and sing. His mom would get up and sing for her friends and stuff when they would come over for game night and stuff at the house and stuff like that with his earlier stuff, and just listening to people that he enjoyed. So it's just wild to see that come out of that,
Oh. Sheldon, what about you? Who's next on your?
I'm gonna go ahead and jump on the Luther Vandross train. Luther Vandross, excellent curator of songs. He kind of took over from Donny Hathaway as the cover king, doing all those remakes. Luther Vandross was a great storyteller. He was a master at using first-person narrative in his delivery when he was telling stories in his records. He was very theatric. It was like a movie, because he's like, imagine watching a movie. and you have the central character in the movie, and they're going through different frames in the film, and they're going through different situations, within the story. And that's how Luther Vandross records were, because he was always the big thing with him is that when you had him singing songs, he was this character in the movie where he was always looking for love, and love was like right at his fingertips, and before he could grab it, it would just, he couldn't quite get it. It was like a story. It was like he was a character in the movie, and he used his voice to be able to articulate emotion, heartbreak, and romance. He was never raunchy. He wasn't going to overwhelm you with the gospel runs, but he could still give you chills with how he manipulated his voice. He had a technique that was flawless, because Luther Vandross studied singers. He studied 50s and 60s singers. So he really studied their technique, but he also really tapped into the energy of female singers, because the female singers were singing about love and angst and emotion. So that's where his blueprint from is, that he kind of modeled himself after female singers. And of course, he was a great singer. So he came up in an era where background singers were major. Background singers were stars within themselves. So if you wanted to make a record, you had to go get the great background singer. So he did that. He was also, before he made records on his own, we used to hear him on the TV commercials on the radio doing the jingles and the commercials. So by the time we knew who he was, but we never knew what he looked like. So when he came out with his records, oh man, it was it, man. And everybody really loved his records. And he could do up-tempo records like The Glow of Love and Searching and Never Too Much. And then he could go from those records to A House Is Not a Home, and records like The Other Side of the World. And here's a guy who was selling records that were platinum and double platinum and triple platinum effortlessly. And he was kind of like an enigma, because he never had the pop success, but he was, I would say he was Black music's, I don't want to say king, but he was like parallel with Whitney Houston in terms of the integrity of the music, the packaging and the presentation. It was just flawless. Imagine seeing a pristine Bentley or Mercedes Benz, or when you look at commercial item, consumer items, Louis Vuitton and Gucci. He was like the equivalent of all of that. He's just peerless, man. And then, like you said, Brother Woody, is that this is a guy who looked at his career as a profession. So when he sang in places, there was no air conditioning on, because he didn't want to ruin his voice. He approached his career the way Kobe Bryant approached his basketball career. He was a consummate professional.
Thanks.
Okay. Woody, who's next for you?
I thought you was next.
Oh, me. Nat King Cole.
That was my pop guy right there. Yeah, my pop love old brother Nat.
The thing about him is that he felt, I do not understand, because, when we look at racism in America and segregation, and you had this Black man in a suit on TV singing like he was part of the royal family. He's very elegant, very smooth. But he was, Mona Lisa or any of his. It felt like he was an orator telling a story through song in a very classy way. Always wearing a suit, Sidney Poitier kind of stuff. And Unforgettable, all the stuff, taking his time. I have his greatest hits. I've got it. I had his album. There's a time I had any album he had released, because he was another very distinct singer. That you can't say. And I don't know other singers, but I don't know if I've ever heard anyone sound like him or deliver or sing the way he does. And I don't know how life was in America during the time he was on TV, but I would have thought that he was a role model to others who were thinking about how to get out or how to make it seeing that he was in front. So yeah, Nat King Cole.
Well, I'm gonna give you a little story about Nat King Cole. Nat King Cole, he starts out as a jazz guy. He's a jazz piano player and he sings. The way Teddy Pendergrass started playing drums and they brought him out front, that's how it was with Nat King Cole. He was a piano player, had a very distinctive voice, very warm voice. And during that time in the 40s and the 50s and 60s, singing was totally different from how singing is now. Because in terms of singing, it was about, and these guys didn't like necessarily write songs, but you had to have a skill in presenting a song. Because again, this is a time when people were going out to see people. Like now we watch videos and this, that, and the other. You're going out to see singers. So if you were a singer during that time, you had to you tell a story, but you have to be presented. So if you're singing, like you said, Mona Lisa, then he's singing Nature Boy. And Nature Boy is very wistful. It's like he's telling the story, and it's almost like a Disney movie, but he could go from different types of songs. He can sing songs in Spanish. Even though he didn't have the great accent, people from South America bought his records up by the thousands. He was very good at the time when he was out, because that was his style of singing was what, and because he comes out at a time when the teenage market is just starting to come into effect. So he's tapping into the adult audience. And so this is before like the Beatles and Elvis and people like that. And this guy is really good, man. It's like the way Luther Vandross has a pageantry about his music, Nat King Cole had an elegance about his music. So everything he's saying, it sounded really good. And I got a lot of his compilations and a lot of his music, man, and it's just smooth, And he had that image, like you said, he had the suits and all of that, and people loved him. And then he did things that we take for granted that people are doing now. It was like one of the first black guys to have his own television show, So a lot of barriers Nat King Cole broke. But in terms of his singing, you can close your eyes. It's like Sade. You can close your eyes and he can just transport you to whatever he's singing about. Very great singer.
Yeah. Okay, who's next then?
It's Woody.
Okay.
Shoot, man, y'all mentioned him earlier, Jeffrey Osborne.
Oh, Jeffrey.
He's one that I didn't even realize that I was a fan, because it was just certain songs that I would just love. And then by him being in the group LTD, and then some of the stuff was solo, and then it's just like it just clicked in my head one day, like, oh, that's him too. So he just sings so many songs that I love. And his voice is so like, it's just soulful. I can't even think of another word for his voice. It's just soulful, and you feel pretty much every word that he say when he sings, man. And he's another like a person that's not the biggest in stature. Like they have a big voice, their voice is bigger than them. Like I say the same thing about Casey and JoJo. When I first met them, I told them like I thought that JoJo would have had Casey's voice and vice versa, because Casey was smaller. I thought he had the pretty smooth voice, and then JoJo was more like huskier. So I'd have thought he had that great big voice like that. And like Jeffrey, I met him and he's not very tall. He's very in shape, like he's muscular and stuff. You can tell to this day, like even at whatever age he is now, like 60s or 70s probably, he work out. He in better shape than me, I tell you that. But it's like his voice is just so robust, and it's to hear such a big voice come out of like this small person is mind blowing to me. And like I don't know if he writes. Does he write his brother Sheldon?
Yeah,
like those songs.
A lot of songs he wrote. As a matter of fact, he wrote some records for Whitney Houston. Like All at Once, he wrote that.
That's one of my favorite songs from her.
Yeah, Jeffrey Osborne.
Yeah,
a lot of songs he wrote. When he was with LTD, he wrote a lot of songs. As a matter of fact, Jeffrey Osborne, when he was with LTD, he was like back in the day, the bands had the front man, and people loved the back. They had the up tempos, but when he had the ballads, we both deserve each other's love, and all those records, those battles with LTD. And then it was the point where he was the one writing all the songs, and he was the star, and the label wanted him to go solo, but the band was like, no, you can't go solo just yet. So he had to wait a whole year to become a solo artist. Wow. So when he came out, his first joint came out in 82. And this is like Teddy Pendergrass, he has an accident, boom, Jeffrey Osborne comes, Lionel Richie comes, and he has a success. But like you said, he's having like, at the time when blacks R&B singers have appeal on the R&B side and kind of like pop radio. He was that guy, but his music was never corny. He had that very soaring baritone voice.
Yeah. And his subject matter is stuff that they got the whole thing now what they call like simping and stuff like that. Like he had songs that a guy that's not quote unquote a simp could still appreciate his music. He had that song called "Don't You Get So Mad About It," talking about don't you can't be embarrassing me in public. Can't be like that. You gonna be my girl. Like he had some song that you could still thump your chest and you can still listen to them lyrics and still sing along with them lyrics and don't even feel like you being sappy. I mean, he had definitely sweet love songs. We both deserve each other's love and stuff like that. But he also had them songs that you could thump your chest and feel good about yourself and still be rocking out to it, man. He had hits for days with Plain Love. Man, the Friday Night Videos era, man. Yeah, he's definitely one of them ones.
Yeah,
and in the 80s, he was big. People don't realize that, like, it's Michael Jackson and Prince and all these other ones. But this guy, even though Luther was really selling a lot of records, Jeffrey Osborne, he was able to do the pop and the R&B thing, kind of merge them together. He was extremely successful in the mid 80s.
People used to do that. That comes from his song. From You Should Be Mine.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to try and bring you on the show because I remember him in Nigeria as well, and I always remember him and James Ingram as a sort of they just seem to. I used to remind and that's We will try and also have an addition to compare the 80s with the 90s and which actually gave us the best music, but that'll be for another day.
That'd be fun to listen to. Yeah, that'd be fun. And please get him on the show because I'd love to hear him speak about his life and him. I know the kind of questions you ask. Definitely, I'd be very interested to hear what he had to say. So that'd be dope. I enjoyed the one with Elder Budge too.
So I mean, those people. But I want us to be able to celebrate more of the 80s. But I'm going to throw a curveball here and go for Kenny Green.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Kenny Green from Intro. They're celebrating their 30 years this year. Kenny Green.
Who you say?
Kenny Green from Intro.
Okay, Intro. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I actually would put him in the same sort of situation with Luther, where he's singing from a place of pain, a place of there's a because even the songs he wrote, so all Real Love and all the stuff that he wrote for Mary, he did Real Love, he did
Reminisce too, right?
Reminisce, and he did
My Love.
I think
My Love. Yeah,
he did My Love. Yeah. So there is, but there was something haunting about how he sang and how he delivered. And I don't know why Intro didn't blow up bigger, because they had the sound, they had the song, they had everything. They were different from Jodeci, so it wasn't as if they were like in the same lane and stuff. They probably weren't on the right label. So I don't think Atlantic knew how to push them, because they had the same issue with they just didn't know how to push them. But as a Kenny Green, just vocally, just one of a kind. Did you ever meet him, Woody?
Yeah, once, very, very briefly in London, England, because they were in a rush leaving out and we were coming into the party or whatever. But I remember going in studios and hearing producers and engineers tell stories about how he would cut like 40 tracks of just background vocals alone. And then come in and put the leads with it and stuff like that. Man, like his pen and his mind was like unmatched for real. He was from Detroit, so he had that church soul in him, like a lot of his vocals kind of remind me of like a lighter Marvin Winans. And it's like he had that gospel in his voice, but then the harmonies, the notes and stuff that he would hear. Because it's different types of harmony. You got your standard 1, 2, 3, 4 harmonies, you got the bright harmonies, you got the dissonant notes and stuff like that. But then like with him, it was just like he had a style all his own. You had to study him to be able to do those harmonies that he did for real. He's definitely a great in my book. I'm happy that you brought him up.
Well, Buddy did say that he played me some unreleased Kenny tracks, and they've got hundreds of, they've got 20. It's almost like Tupac. He was just constantly recording, and when he was on his deathbed, he was just recording. And I
You know
have
what
to.
I call him? And he from where you from? To me, and I've never heard anybody else say it, but to me, he was like the Black Freddie Mercury. Like like his style of making music and stuff like that. Like they said, Freddie Mercury, when he was on his deathbed, he did some song, and it was like the notes that he hit in that song was like almost not humanly possible. Like even when he was 100% well walking around, he wasn't even hitting notes and stuff like that. He was still doing it with that passion and dedicated till he left here. You know?
Yeah. So I mean, as I said, he's he's somebody who intro, as I said, is celebrating 30 years when they debuted. So hopefully they may get some of his unreleased stuff out
That'd
there.
be dope. I did
Yeah.
something. I said a little piece on there. I don't know if it made the cut or whatever, but they did a whole documentary, and the producers had came to town and interviewed me, and I talked and said a couple words about it because they were really big in our formation of our sound for real. Because like studying that first album, man, you can learn a lot as a singer and even as a songwriter. You can learn a lot from listening to intros albums. They put, I think 2 got released. I think it was 2 released, but I know that first, both New Life and first, I don't remember the name of the first one.
So they had 2 albums out.
But don't leave me on there.
Anyway, feels like the first time.
Yo, that was on the second one. Yeah, on
that
New
was on the
Life.
first time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sheldon, who's next on yours?
Okay, I'm gonna jump on the Kenny G Love train real quick.
Yes, sir.
Kenny was like, he had a jazzy voice like an Anita Baker. His voice, he had especially when you heard him sing like love thing, jazzy voice. I was songwriting, and he's unique because when you songs that is singing that he wrote, she's singing in the same vocal arrangement. Because it's one thing to write songs, but it's another thing to write songs with just write lyrics. But it's different than to write songs and you have the melody and vocal arrangement and it's all intertwined, which is how songs were written many, many years ago. His songs had that vibe where you had the vocal arrangement that was the signature, you had melody and all of that. And he had a tone. You know, there was a little bit of the runs he would do like with Stevie Wonder, but as a pure singer, it was like a detour. He had a breezy way of singing songs, detour away from guys trying to sound Aaron all. He kind of was in his lane. Now, of course, the first album is the one with all the hits. But one, I'll tell you, go back and listen.
Oh, sorry, you've been cutting in and out.
His singing, he's doing the vocal arrangement and then the songwriting. Yeah, because it's kind of. You hear me?
Yeah, you've been cutting in and out.
You hear me?
You're coming. You're back now, but you were cutting in and out.
Yeah, because you were the same earlier. But Kenny had a jazzy style. If you listen to that second album and you listen to every song on there, it's just like the songwriting was a notch above whatever was out at the time. I know that in interview one of the members, and they said that they kind of like they let him go out and go do his thing. You know, it wasn't like the first album, but that second album, man, in terms of his singing, the songwriting, the vocal arrangements, that's the biggest thing. Because there's a lot of people singing, but in terms of vocal arrangements, that guy was the man.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know if you want to. I don't know if you want to go out and come back in because your video has been breaking up and stuff.
Yeah, let me go ahead and do that. I'll go out and let me go out and come back in. I'll do
that. While he's doing that, Woody, who makes it? Who comes onto yours?
Man, since you said somebody from a group, I'm gonna say 2 people. We can talk about them both at the same time. Man. Casey and JoJo.
Casey, you have them both of them. Okay.
Yeah. Since they from a group, I ain't gonna.
And I put down Casey as well, so that's cool. So go ahead.
It's like that yin and yang between the both of those guys. Like you got, like I said, you got one that sang so pretty and so sweet, you know, and just like pure. And then you got the other one that sings so just robust, and his voice was so big, and it reminded you of like Stevie Wonder. It reminded you of, in the first album, like him and Aaron Hall had a lot of similarities because he, you know, they studied as a group. They studied God the same way how we came up and studied them. It's like I call it the granddaddies, then the dads, then the sons, you know. And but so it's like just that yin and yang between those two voices. Like KC, they actually were a gospel group. You know that they were a gospel
Yeah, I
group
heard
called
about
Little
the
Cedric.
Haley brothers and stuff. Were they that
They
well
used to
known?
sing.
Were they well known?
Yeah, on the gospel scene. I'm from
Oh,
Baltimore, and that's where they actually used to live here in Baltimore. And
okay.
like they used to do gospel shows, and they traveled the country. Like they were all over the place. But I know here on our gospel station, we would always hear "Jesus Saves," the song that KC made over like a couple of like a year or so ago. He
Yeah,
came
during
out
the
with a
lockdown.
remix
Yeah,
of it.
yeah.
Yeah. But like he used to sing that song, and then they had like probably like 2 or 3 albums that came out, but I never knew about JoJo. He had a couple of he sung on Jesus Saves, he sung like one part on there. But it's like when I became an adult and I heard Jodeci, and then I was able to put 2 and 2 together, or somebody connected the dots for me and let me know that that was Lil Cedric and his brother, you know. But like just hearing them sing, and like when the first time I heard Jodeci, treat them like they want to be treated, those big vocals and those big harmonies, like really the only other time I had heard singing like just like that was in church. It was from Quartet Singers, which is like the kind of group that they were in. So it just like blew me away. And of course, like I naturally wanted to, like I remember it was a girl in my school, and she was like, "Girl, there's some sexy men on TV called Jodeci," and I like her, so I wanted to be a sexy man. So I went and looked and see what they was doing or whatever like that. So I came back and tried sing like them and sing the songs around the school and stuff like that. But then I met one of my group members, and I let him hold my tape. And he came back and he had the look, the sound, and everything. So I was like, man, hold up, I'm gonna let him have that. So that's when I went and started studying JoJo, which was like the whole opposite side. And it suited me more anyway, because I'm more like a smooth singer. Because before that, Ralph Tresvant was my all-time favorite singer. Ralph Tresvant and Ricky Bell, because I was like a big New Edition fan. And then when BBD broke off, I became a big fan of Ricky Bell's vocals also. So I was and Steve from Troop. So on that smooth side, so that fit me with JoJo, just to do the smooth vocals and just turn it to them nice and soft and easy, you know. So both of those two brothers right there, definitely in my Mountain Rushmore of singers, man, male singers. And I know they're in a group, and I wasn't gonna say them because they were in a group. That's what.
No. I mean, they're singers as singers, and I picked KC as well in my singers, just because he sang like, you know, church singers didn't. They left the church at home, and then they'll come in and try and be more polished. But he was like, "No, that's how I sing," and he was doing it. He was a gospel artist who sang R&B. It just felt like that. That's how it felt like that. And I think the up-tempo stuff was big in Nigeria more so than the slow stuff. But what the slow stuff did, it allowed, the up-tempo part of the album was much bigger than the Forever My Lady and Stay. Those didn't win. So the My Phone Doesn't Ring Anymore and
Gotta Love.
Those are massive tracks.
Oh, they actually sung Gotta Love at the concert that night. They performed Gotta Love, and that messed me up, man, because I still sitting there remembering when they had the video, when they had them yellow jumpsuits on. I was just sitting there thinking about all that and just watching them like right there. I'm like, man, I thought you never hear your favorite artist perform like the album cuts, and well, that wasn't an album cut; it had a video and everything, but like they always stick to the bigger hits and stuff. Like I remember
Alvin said that was it. They were about to get dropped until they came out, because they started off with the up-tempo stuff.
Right, and I heard them say that on your show. Yep.
Yeah, but as I said, for me, KC was just like, wow. He was taking you to church. If you'd never been to a black church, you just listen to KC.
That back and forth thing, that baby, and then they go back and forth with each other.
Call and respond. That gospel jazz.
R&B group does that, yo. Like you only heard that in church up until them, yo. So to hear some R&B group do that, I was like mind blown, and I'm like, maybe my mother would let me listen to this if she don't catch the church. Like they don't listen to that church music. I'll turn them up with a little bit of confidence. you know, but definitely love both them brothers, man. Two of the greatest.
Well, you know, the OJs used to do that too. They go back and forth like that.
Oh
You go
snap!
back and
Yeah,
listen to OJ records in the 70s, they do
you
that
right.
back and forth like that too.
And then they're another two with that same yin yang dynamic because Walt and Eddie, like Walt super smooth, and then Eddie with the gritty. So you just connected some dots for me, man. Thank you.
Yeah, you're
I
welcome, brother.
appreciate
You
that for
welcome.
real, man.
You welcome. Yeah.
Been a fan of Walt, and I've been a fan of Eddie too, but I'm always the fan of the, like, I don't want to call them underdogs because they definitely got fans too, but everybody, when you think Levert, you think of Eddie. But it's like, for me, I always thought of Walt because he coming with, you're my darling, baby.
Yes.
It's so smooth, yo. This great.
Yes. And you know what?
Yeah.
It's three of them, but when they do their own, they do all their background vocals. But not only does Walter have the baritone, Walter also sings bass too.
What?
He got a bass voice. There's a song that they had called "You Got Your Hooks in Me." And you hear the bass, and I think "Stairway to Heaven." There's a bass. I have to send you one of the clips. You hear the bass? Do. That's him singing. That's him singing the bass.
You know, JoJo, same, and so they so similar because JoJo is naturally a baritone. And like when you hear the old records, he was up in the stratosphere, like that song with him and CeCe Peniston that they did on Apollo. He came straight out on the stages in the stratosphere. But Casey told me one day, he said, "Well, do you know JoJo baritone?" I said, "Get out of here, man. I think baritone, I think like Whitney Phipps or somebody." So to be able to hit them notes all the way down there and then come all the way up there, that's some French stuff, man. There's some talented folks out here, man. The Most High definitely blessed our people, man, with talent for days and days and weeks and months.
Indeed.
So Sheldon, what's on your
the next thing I got, and just real quick, I got cut off with the Kenny Green. Right. Check out an intro song called New Life.
Yeah. He wrote that about his dad, but they didn't realize that he was dying when he wrote it. They didn't realize that the whole album, he didn't tell them that he was dying. And so it was only, and they were like, okay, why is he going all somber? They thought it was about his dad, not realizing it was about him.
Yeah, that's a dope record. Bobby Womack I got him.
Oh, wow.
Bobby Womack is a great singer. Bobby is very underrated because he wrote a lot of songs that became hits for other people. As a matter of fact, there's one song, even on the instrumental side, there's a song that George Benson that really broke him out called Breeze, and it's all guitar. I love that Bobby Womack. He did that song first. But Bobby Womack is Bobby Womack, guitar player. So Bobby Womack is a great storyteller. And the type of songs that he was singing, he would have this monologue. He would lead into his records. And it was almost equivalent to like a country record. It was a lot of storytelling, lyrics, narrative. And while other singers kind of portrayed themselves as these romantic lover men, Bobby Womack portrayed himself. He's like a hard luck guy, bruised and battered by love and life. Like he has a song called Across 110th Street where he's telling the story, growing up in Harlem. And he kind of paints a picture. Then he's got another song called Nobody Loves You When You're Down and Out, where he's talking about where he had a lot of money and all his friends was around, and then he lost his money, and the next time he get $1, he will hold on to it real tight. He just had a lot of realism, in his record. So people who never heard of Bobby Womack, check out If You Think You're Lonely Now, a song called I Wish You Wouldn't Trust Me So Much, where he talks about he's attracted to his best friend's girlfriend. He's got a song called Facts of Life When the Sun Go Down, where he talks about, as a monologue, where he talks about he's a singer and life on the road where it's so lonely. And he's talking about how he meets a groupie. And she's like, he meets her and she comes up to him and he's like, well, let's go ahead and go back to my room. And she don't want to go back to the room. But it's like he's telling her, hey, look, I'm a singer. I'm not going to be here tomorrow. I know you got your own thing or whatever. Don't leave your man. I'm only here for one night. But it's a dope story. It's a monologue, and he goes into the song. So Bobby Womack is like a black country singer. You know, there's black country singers like Charlie Pride and people like that. Oh yeah. But Bobby Womack, great stories, and he always portrayed himself like a real guy. It wasn't like he was okay. I'm gonna seduce you. You know, it's not champagne and roses. It was just like this. I'm a real guy off the corner. So
right, a real one like Alexander.
Yeah, just like that. Yep.
Goodness. Okay. I'm going to go MJ, Michael Jackson. And my all-time favorite song is The Lady in My Life.
Nice.
But there is just with Michael, when you think about, post Jackson 5 or Jackson's, you think about Off the Wall, which I think was probably one of his, as much as I love Thriller, I think Off the Wall, he was just, there was no expectation, no pressure. He just felt great. I've gone back recently to listen to History and listen to Invincible and realized actually there were some real good tracks that he put out there. And, I think because there was the legend of Michael Jackson that people get lost in, a song like Man in the Mirror, when he did the Grammy performance and he says, he was pointing to people out there, or when he does, They Don't Care About Us, he was fighting so many fronts about injustice and racism and all this stuff, fighting the labels, fighting everything, and carrying it on his shoulder and stuff. And so he's always going to be my number one artist and stuff like that and everything. And I think, but listening to, I think unfortunately for him, the Riven Nation album had such an impact that he tried to chase that sound. Unfortunately, he couldn't come up with it, but he just stayed away from his lane. And that's probably why he let Quincy Jones go, because he didn't think he could give him that Rhythm Nation sound and stuff. But anyway, that's Michael. I'm sure everyone might have opinions about him or not.
Oh, definitely. You want to go first, brother Sheldon? Or you want me?
Yeah. Michael is on my list too. And Michael, people, it's like, because he's the type of artist that he's like a real-time artist, because it's not only it's the music, we're kind of like his history is being played out along with the music. And then you look at his performance gifts and all of that. So everything kind of overshadows the core of his gift, because he's a great dancer, great performer, in terms of visualizing what a career could be outside the traditional scope of Black music, because he kind of comes along and he kind of like Earth, Wind and Fire. Philip Bailey, falsetto, said that what Earth, Wind and Fire did with their concerts, Michael did the television. So, a lot of times, a lot of the history making things that he did, it kind of overshadow him as a singer. Because I'm going to tell you, if you go back in the Jackson 5 days, okay, he's 11, 12, 13 years old, and he can deliver a song the way a grown man could. So if you go back and listen to that catalog, he could, whether it's up tempos or ballads, and I'll just kind of stick with the ballads, like Never Can Say Goodbye, Got to Be There, just that whole Jackson 5 catalog, he can just really deliver a song. Then he goes into the Jackson mode where everything is really slicker, it's very percussive, but he has a distinct voice. And obviously when you look at Off the Wall and the Thriller, his voice is very supple, very fluid, because he can kind of it's almost an instrument within itself. So, and it sounds good with the music. So it's not just him singing lyrics, there's the melody, everything is embedded in the music, and it just sounds really so good to your ear. And when he does all of those records, and then at that point, Michael's greatest gift, he's always looking around the corner to see what's next.
Yeah.
He's always taking bits and pieces of things that came before him. He was young enough to embrace the past, but he was old enough to embrace the past, but young enough to see what was around the corner. And that was the thing that he was always, there's a spiritual thing where you're in the world, but not of it. He was in the world, but he was of the world musically. So he could do all of these different types of things. But like you said, is that he's the type of person where I don't look back. So whatever I did, what was in the past. And it was actually Quincy who recommended that he get with Teddy. Now, Teddy was supposed to work with Michael on Bad, but of course, Gene had the shackles on him. He wouldn't let him get away. But with Teddy, even though I love Dangerous, Dangerous is the album is kind of dated for me because I love the sound, I love the album, but Michael is singing, he's doing all these things, which is great. But it's like when you look at Off the Wall and Bad to a lesser degree, he's at his pinnacle as a singer. So now he's going into more of the technology, and the technology is kind of drowning out his voice. The songs are great, don't get me wrong, but it was fresh and it was good to see him sing New Jack Swing. But in terms of him, he started to get away from his pure vocal gifts. But here's the thing, what makes him great is that everybody, if you look at Justin Timberlake, you look at Neo, you look at Pharrell, you look at a lot of Usher, everybody took bits and pieces of Michael Jackson's vocal style in terms of where they're using his melodies, they're using the vocal counterpoints, all of that. So even though he's gone, he's like the one that everybody kind of borrow from at certain points and put that stuff in their music, even to this day. You even have Mary J. Mary J. had a record called Just Fine, and she's singing, she's singing in the vibe of Michael Jackson doing the Don't Stop Till You Get Enough with the harmonies and all of that. You see Pharrell. So, you know, Michael is a very influential singer. So I'm glad that there's the business side that we all know. There's the visual performance as a singer, dancer, but as a pure singer, his legacy is in how other people went ahead and just took bits and pieces. The way they got the whole Aaron Hall, Charlie Wilson thing, you start seeing Al B. Sure is another one. They all kind of like borrowed from that Michael Jackson energy because he had that supple voice. It was very melodic. It was very easy on your ear. And then people don't realize he could sing in different ranges. He could do falsetto. He could do tenor. He could do tenor. He wasn't necessarily not necessarily a baritone, but maybe just, you know, before you hit that baritone range, he could hit all the different ranges. You know, it was ear. If I had two words to go ahead to sum it up, Michael Jackson's voice was like ear candy, man. It was ear candy.
I mean, think about Beat It. He was talking about gang violence, like the Warriors situation in New York. But, you know, so he was ahead of his time trying to talk about self-destruction and violence. Beat it, no one needs to be defeated. Though you may see the video and see them wrestling, but when you listen to, because right now they're celebrating 50 years of hip hop and and so I'm being able to be educated about the Bronx and the Warriors and the gang violence. But that was around the time in the 80s, 82 is when he came out with Beat It, just to talk about there's no point going into this gang stuff. But, you know, I think, you know, and he's constantly been spreading the message from Thriller onwards. He would always have an opportunity to either talk about ending violence against one another or about injustice and things like that. But when the bigger you become, the labels are like, look, man, put that political stuff to one side. Let's start trying to make money. But if people take a step back and look for his albums and see, he's always been looking about trying to spread a message and really make a difference. But I'm
gonna jump in there real quick. I'm gonna jump in there real fast with the Beat It situation. When you saw that was a take on a movie called West Side Story.
Yeah.
That's what that was. So in terms of the whole gang energy and all of that, that was a take. Because Michael Jackson studied everything, like the way Beyonce would drop different type of references and different type of energy. That's what that basically was. But when you look at like the Thriller album, it was just what made those albums so good is that it had a different type of songwriting. So he told stories, you know. So the message stuff would eventually come, you know. But again, his thing was he always told stories, and they were almost semi-autobiographical. Like if you go back and listen to a Jackson's record called "That's What You Get for Being Polite," you got to check that out. There's some of those songs that he's singing, and they're about him. They're about him. There's the first song he ever wrote called "Blues Away." So he's writing songs that are like their stories, their narratives, and it's not like, okay, there's songs that you get up and dance and this, that, and the other, but he's also writing songs that have like unique stories that are almost like semi-autobiographical. And then of course, like you said, there's Man in the Mirror. They don't really care about us. And now he's really tapping into the message. But like you said, you know, he had his songs, whether he wrote them or not, they had a diverse lyrical range. And when you combine that with his voice, perfect.
Unmatched. Yeah.
Yes,
Woody?
yeah, man. That song too, when you talking about the messages, he had that song, The Price of Fame. And he had they don't care. They did it for the money. And he talk about how people felt so selling like everything that
Anything.
people talk about now, right? He was way ahead of his time with that and stuff that people still don't need. They jam to it and bop their head, but they don't even get the message of what he's saying. What DMX say, F the beat. Listen to the words of the damn song. And some of those songs you listen to them lyrics, he was really saying some stuff that's relevant to this day. And I'm agree with you too. Off the Wall is my favorite too. Like out of all this stuff, Off the Wall. But then Brother Sheldon, that record that you was talking about with the Blues Away and That's What You Get for Being Polite. That's my folks. That's her favorite. My good friend of mine. That's one of her favorite albums with that on there. And there's another song on there. I could never think of the name of it, but it's gonna come to me after we get off of here. But it's another song on that same album that was just so pretty. Like the melody of it is just
Push
so
Me
pretty.
Away.
That's it. That's it. Yes, sir.
Yeah,
that's the one right there.
That was from the Destiny album back in '78.
Man,
Push Me Away. That's what you get for being polite. I tell you, and that's the thing about it is that that melody. He really, those ballads. Even when he did a record called Good Times, he was singing with his brothers.
We remade Good Times, but it never came out. Well, we started remaking it. We never finished it.
Yeah, so there's a lot of songs in that catalog that in his, throughout his history, man, great records. Great
records.
Yes,
sir. So who's next with
might be you.
Well, I came out with Michael. I don't know if you guys had.
I have Michael. I have Michael's.
Okay. Yeah. What about yourself?
Yeah, he definitely is up there. He definitely
okay.
Yes,
okay. Well, I had Aaron Hall.
Okay.
Yes, I had Aaron.
Definitely valid.
You know what? I think his voice with Teddy was magical, but he, as much as people say, he was a reincarnation of Charlie and Stevie, but he was unique and he was different and he had that power and he was actually the one we called the voice was Aaron Hall.
Surely did.
And he just had everything with him, and whether it was up tempo or slow, and he could dance. I was surprised that we looked at Damien, but he was there dancing and stuff. But that whole Gene Griffin stuff really hit him bad, where he just got disillusioned with the industry, because we would have seen something else from him. But yeah, Aaron Hall.
Yeah, that's the slow voice version album. Of Don't Be Afraid.
Yeah, Don't Be Afraid. I actually like
the violins and stuff.
I like the jazz version with Gerald Albright.
I gotta check that one out.
Oh yeah, there's a jazz version with Gerald Albright playing the sax on that one.
Oh my goodness! And the stuff he did on the Above the Rim soundtrack with Jewel, the duet that he did with her on Above the Rim soundtrack. Aaron just cold, man, cold.
When he did the voice album, there's like a suite of songs that he had, like When You Need Me. He had, of course, I Miss You to the End of Time. Yeah. Aaron was dope because Aaron at the time, everybody who was singing songs, they were like either in a falsetto and in a tenor. So Aaron comes back and he comes with what he's doing. And of course, if you're young, 17, 18, 15, you hear the voice, but you connect it with a Charlie Wilson or Stevie Wonder, but he's like the new version of that. So when you see him, it's just really dynamic. He's very charismatic, and he kind of, one of the things is that he kind of rerouted, as far as he brought back like dark-skinned performers, because at that point it was like the Howard Hewitt, El DeBarge thing or whatever, and he was coming in, he's dark-skinned guy, and it was just right off of that, it kind of just, that became like cool again, and now it wasn't more about like that look. So it was like he was almost like he brought that masculine David Ruffin energy back, so definitely, his songs were really great. I think that a lot of his best work is when he was obviously working with Teddy, because Teddy knew how to make tracks with his voice, because Aaron sings, but there's a lot of runs. So the music kind of like balanced it out. And then there's the records that he did with Tricky Stewart and those guys like that really complemented what he's doing. So when he's working with the right producers, man, the music is super great. There's a record that he did on the God 3 album. What's the record? They're replaying James Brown's. What's the record James Brown did? It's A Man's World. It's the first one. It's the first song on the Guy 3 album. Rescue Me.
Rescue Me.
That's the one. Yeah, Aaron. Yeah, Aaron is really killing it, man. Aaron is he's very underrated as time goes on. Yeah. Obviously, we know the R. Kelly situation comes in and uses his style and goes in a different direction. But you got to respect Aaron in terms of what he did. He kind of hit the reset button, and he brought the gospel feel back into R&B, because at that time the gospel vibe was kind of like 87-ish. It wasn't there, because that whole rough sound, the industry kind of filtered that out, because the mentality was the softer voice singers were the ones who were more
the pretty
marketable.
voice singers, Aaron, right?
Yeah, Aaron kind of brought that masculinity back that you probably hadn't seen since like a Teddy Pendergrass or someone like that. So you got to give him that respect. Yeah. And speaking of that, it's funny because we talk about masculine singers, and now I'm going back to like a tenor. My choice is Marvin Gaye.
Okay.
Marvin Gaye, he's a very fluid singer, very smooth style, and he was like an artist, because he would do lead, like when you see what Michael Jackson was doing in the studio with the different vocals, like if you listen to Off the Wall, the song Off the Wall, and he's singing, there's the kind of like falsetto tenor, there's the baritone, there's the alto, he's singing in different ranges, and they're stacking the vocals, they're doubling the vocals. So Michael Jackson is doing the backgrounds and he's doing the leads. Marvin Gaye was doing that on his records in the 70s. So it was like he was like a painter, he was like an artist. He take the lead and background vocals, and he could paint this picture, and he could take you on an erotic journey. He could be spiritual, he could be romantic, and it was like watching a movie. He could sing about being a drug addict. There's a song called Flying High on the Friendly Skies, and he said, "I know I'm hooked, my friend, on the boy who made slaves out of men." And boys is a term back then for like heroin, drugs.
Wow. So
it was like he could sing about being a drug addict. Then he could reflect about the world's problems on what's going on. Then he can go to sensuality, real sexy. Well, let's get it on. And I want you. And it was masterful, and it was very intoxicating. So for people who don't really know Marvin Gaye, if you listen to Robin Thicke's albums, Robin Thicke borrowed that whole Marvin Gaye style and he put it into his music. If you listen to Al B. Sure's Night and Day, it's like an update of a Marvin Gaye album, the way Al uses the lead and the background vocals, and it's very lush, it's very cinematic. So that's Marvin's on my list.
What about Woody?
He should be on everybody's list, man. That was my pop's favorite, and I never got it. I mean, I liked him because my pop liked him, but he listened to like the more happier sounding songs and stuff. But one day I was in the studio, and in the room next door, they were playing that "I Want You" album like super loud for whatever reason. And I heard that, and I heard those harmonies, and I heard the first thing that jumped out when I heard the "I Wanna Be a Lover," the one that Joe did the thing on the 50 Cent record. I was just like, yo, that come from Marvin Gaye? And I went and I got that CD like the following day, and I play it to this day. Like that's still a banger around my place, man. Like you said, he was one of the pioneers of people doing their own background vocals, because like before him, it was still people had like background singers in there, and if one person messed up, then everybody had to do it over and all that stuff. So it's like he paved the way when it come to that, and I'm grateful, that you can go in and do all your own stuff now. And they showed us the way, him and Mike and everybody that came after this showed us the way as far as that's done. So definitely nothing but respect for Marvin Gaye. My dad used to wear a red cap and roll it up and stuff just like Marvin Gaye.
And one of the things with Marvin is that Marvin was an originator where he was like going into the studio like Prince, and he was writing his own music. Marvin was a collaborator, and he was good at taking ideas that people had, and he would build upon the ideas and make them his own.
Yeah.
So a lot of records that he had, he co-wrote with people, and he was a master, you know, in the studio. But when you listen to, I don't know, nobody buys any CDs anymore, but if you can catch, you know, Spotify, they're different. They put out, when, you know, when Motown was putting CDs out, their versions, they put expanded versions of Let's Get It On and I Want You, where they got alternate studio takes. So you can hear him doing the harmonies. I'm telling you, man, that the music is.
They got some of that on YouTube. You can type it in and hear the acapellas and everything and some of the
songs.
A phenomenon, man.
Nobody.
Wow.
Nobody.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. For mine, I want to say Johnny Taylor, man. You made me think of him when you was talking about Bobby Womack, but Johnny Taylor, he's like another storyteller, and when he sing, it's just like just a different feeling, man. Like some people sing and you bob your head and you enjoy their singing, but then other people, you just feel it. And you know, sometimes you don't even know why you feel it. You just sing I guess it's just from the heart or from the gut, wherever it's coming from, man. It just seems like it comes from somewhere different. And I just found out about him by watching his Unsung, however many years ago that was. But afterwards, when it went off, I just went and started looking into a whole bunch of his different songs and just listening to him. And it just made me feel good to listen to.
Man, you gotta go back. There's a performance. It was a documentary / concert movie that came out in like 72 called Watch Stacks. And it was basically what happened was Stax Records, they had Isaac Hayes and all these artists. What they did was they went to Watts and they booked the stadium and they put all the Stax acts and they performed. And there's a scene where Johnny Taylor is singing a song. It's almost like what R. Kelly was doing with the cheating records. Johnny Taylor had a lot of records like that. He had a record called like Jody, where the man would come to your back door and steal your woman, and he's singing. If you ever watch him, and the women are going crazy, they looking at him and they just really into him, and he's singing. So he's got the he's a soulful guy, you know. And also, people don't give him credit is that his record was the first platinum record that ever had come out, ever certified platinum. The record called Disco Lady. Disco Lady came out like in 1976, and that was the first record that was actually certified platinum.
Wow.
First record that sold certified platinum. At that point, they had changed how they were identifying where the record. Because before, if you sold 1 million copies of a record, you was gold. But then in '76, they changed the platinum joint, and he had the first joint, which was Disco Lady. But yeah, Johnny Taylor, very, very soulful. Very soulful.
I love Rated X. Your love is Rated X.
Yeah, those records were plush.
Repeat sometime, man. That joint serves.
Those records were very plush. You know, it's real smooth. It's like back in the days, cats might have a joint or have some little cognac and you sitting there. Yeah.
You can Max say something real slick to your lady while it's on, or even don't say nothing and just let him say it all. You say Rated X. You already know what time
Rated X.
Yeah. And do something extra special, girl. Oh.
Yes.
So, Keisha, what's your final one then?
Who, me?
Okay, for me.
Sure.
Yeah.
I had a few people, but what I'm going to do, my final one, I'm going to throw El DeBarge in the mix.
Okay. I was about to say
DeBarge. Perfect. I'm going to tell you, for me, El DeBarge, and with respect to everybody that comes after, but I think everybody else who comes after later on, their style is in the vein of other people. So if you look at I'll Be Sure, you know, you hear the Michael Jackson, you hear the Marvin Gaye, you know, you see, you know, you hear, whether it's Cisco, you hear the Bobby Womack, or, you know, all the, and Casey and JoJo, the Stevie Wonder. But El DeBarge, to me, is like, is the singer on the R&B side, is the last cat to come out with original vocal style. Everybody else who comes out afterwards or whatever is rooted in people who came before. Now we know that El DeBarge really, Bobby, he's doing what Bobby was doing. But when you listen to El DeBarge was great at melody. He was great at melody in terms of singing because he had the falsetto. But when you look at that whole DeBarge sound, that sound was like before his time, because the way they sang, the way they harmonized, of course, he was the lead guy. So when he has songs like Time Will Reveal that he's singing, I Like It, and there's another song, Love Me in a Special Way, especially Love Me in a Special Way and Time Will Reveal. These records are very pretty records, but he sings them, but they're not corny records. It's like, a hard, like somebody put them records on, the hardest cat, thug type of guy, rugged guy, they can vibe off of the bars, because the records, they just sound good, man. He has the falsetto, the tenor is romantic, but the records are very melodic. So it's like you can take the words away and you can hear the melody and you still know it's like a DeBarge record. So it's just a tragedy that when he went solo, that he couldn't replicate for a lot of reasons. Of course, Nnamdi interviewed him. He couldn't replicate what he did with DeBarge and continuing that. He had shades of doing it. There's a record that he put out in 2010, 2011. It was a comeback record. Perfect record. He did a record with Faith Evans. I got the name of the album. I wanted him to win so bad with that. But I would say one word that would describe El DeBarge is timeless. He could drop a record today and change the entire game. So no matter who's producing him, that melody, that vibe, that's there. So it's like if you listen to somebody else, Michael Jackson, it's different between Teddy Riley producing him and different from Quincy producing him. No matter who's doing the El DeBarge record, the El DeBarge presence shines through every time.
Because largely too, because he does a lot of his own writing and producing. So of course he knows exactly how he's supposed to sound, He got a different producer and he still need to throw some chords in there to make it him and make it what it need to be. Change some of the writing to make it what it need to be. And then the fact that his voice still sounds just the same, just like you said, timeless. He still sounds just like that. I just saw a tiny desk of him during the pandemic or a little after, and he still was singing them same records in the same original key that they was in, still hitting all the high falsetto stuff. That man is gifted, man. I still love Always. That's my cut to this day.
Yes. And most cats who have falsettos and tenors, especially falsettos, as they get older, the range drops and it becomes heavier and heavier. But he's able to hit those notes.
Right. Yeah. And even with all he's been through, so it just go to show you what the good Lord give you. Can't nobody take it away from you, man.
Yeah.
Definitely things that he's been through would have taken it away from a lot of people. They wouldn't be still doing it like how he's still able to do it. He's a testament.
His songs change the energy in the room. Because like I said, you can have a DJ playing some records and all of a sudden you throw some, El DeBarge records on and it changes the energy.
Yep. And think about the stuff that people sample from him, some of the biggest hip hop hits.
Yeah, I mean, that Biggie and the Shanty.
And Tupac, I Ain't Mad at You. Yeah. That song come from one of their songs, A Dream,
Yeah, listening to what do you call it? The Biggie record, One More Chance remix, and they're singing the melody. That's him.
Yeah, that's him. Man, his writing, him and his sister, as well as his voice, man, is crazy. Yeah, and Bunny's dope too. All of them.
She did a lot of writing of the song, and he did some. When he didn't write the lyrics, he did the music, wrote the music.
And man, when we did "Love Set You Free," you remember the song we did with Teddy Price? Remember Teddy Riley produced it?
Teddy, the drums and all that.
Piano, all when we weren't doing anything while we were waiting for setups and stuff, he sat at the piano and played the Bud songs on the piano. And that was just a treat to hear. So it's like to be that influential to other greats, like your gift and what you did inspire other greats that we know, they a fan of your work. That's a testament too.
And one of the things that El DeBarge talked about years and years ago, when they asked him to define his style, he said he really couldn't define it. But one of the things that he grew up listening to, he was listening to Brazilian music. If you go back and listen to Brazilian music has a lot of melody. There's a lot of changes in the arrangements and in the music. So that's influencing his style. It's like a breezy style. And it's very, very melodic because it's not R&B like soul singing. It's not traditional soul singing. It's just a different type of energy in terms of that. But yeah, Brazilian music was definitely that, and he listened to a lot of Earth, Wind and Fire. But
Okay.
he had, when you look at, and of course it comes out of Bobby, because Bobby was great in that capacity as well, in terms of being able to sing those harmonies and the falsettos and whatnot. But
Yeah,
Elder
that
Bar's,
stuff is
his music,
switch is crazy.
he had romance. The music was romantic.
Mm.
It wasn't really raunchy. It wasn't like a lot of sex in it. But it was pretty without being corny. It was romantic
Right,
without being corny, but he
right,
had those harmonies that really elevated those records. So let's think
right.
about it. He has one lyric, one of those songs. What can I do? It's like when you break the lyrics down, they're very simple, but when he delivers them, it's almost like a Rakim record where his delivery elevates the lyrics. It's one thing you can read the lyrics off the paper, but then when you sing it and you deliver it, it takes it to another level. There's a song, I think Love Me in a Special Way, says, what can I do, I guess, to get through to you? And he's singing. But if you break it down, it's very simple, but when he's singing it, it's to another level.
Wow.
Yeah.
What about yourself, Woody? What's your final?
Shoot, that's what I was gonna say. I was gonna say Elder Barge as well. Then it's like when he said it, I said, "Hey, man, that's even better. We on the same page, man." Like you said,
yeah.
You know,
that beautiful voice. He ain't had to try hard. Like you said, he had to get on. I mean, I'm curious to see if he ever did sing a song. Won't know Where's My Love when he sung with Babyface. I think he got a little gritty on that one. But yeah, like towards the end, he got a little gritty. But I was like, I'm curious to see if he ever did sing a song where he just gave it like that oomph and that grit. But he didn't even need it because he got his point across by what they say. Like some of the gangsters, they point across just by whispering. They never had to raise their voice.
Yeah.
So he never even had to get gritty. He can sing light and pretty to you and still get the same results, man. I love it.
Yes, and he's singing songs with like DJ Quick, very dope records and all of that.
Yep.
You know, Elder
Hand
Barge
in
is the
hand.
man. But I'm gonna tell you, when he came out of '83, I was kind of hating. I ain't gonna lie to you, because when he came out, all the girls like I Like You, and they had that look. You know, they had the hair and the whole nine, and girls used to sing I Like It. Huh?
I said, you light skinned, you ain't wear your hair curly.
Right. It wasn't like that, man. It wasn't like that, man. And the girls was like, man, these people, but then as time go on, they hook you in with those records, man.
Almost definitely.
You know, so it's just like he's the last guy that comes out with an original vocal style. Everyone else coming out, they're dope, but they're almost, it's like an update of somebody who came before them. But Elder Barge is like the last original vocalist for me. But dope. Everybody's dope.
Yeah.
But original. He's original.
And you know, one of really enjoyed being able to talk. It felt for him, because he's a very reserved, shy person, that it felt like he was just being talked to face. And you know, he's constantly trying to make new music. My final one was Christopher Williams. Not just because he has one of my top 5 songs, All I See, but it's the fact that he was influenced with Devontae. All I See, that whole Uptown stuff.
And Horace Brown, one of my favorite vocalists.
Yeah.
They're all in
the backgrounds on that song. He's so underrated. He had an album that came out, but it got released by mistake. And somebody I knew had a copy of it, and we just used to sit and just dissect that album, man. Cold Feet.
What album was that?
What album was that? I don't know the name of the album, but it wasn't that one with One for the Money on there, though. It was a whole different album that he had that was supposed to come out on Uptown. It had Station Love was on there, and it had like different remixes of that. He had a song with Devontae, 2 songs from Devontae, one called Holding On, and one called I Love You So. That to this day, man, I put them on. They on YouTube. Type in Horace Brown, I Love You So, or Horace Brown, Holding On, and I guarantee you they gonna move y'all. But my bad, I didn't mean to cut you off. You said Christopher, and you said All I See, and I just got excited because that Uptown era was very, very special to me. That Uptown era is a lot of what even made me want to be in the music business. So anything from around that time, I get hyped. Sorry about that, brother. I'll give you the
got a record called,
sorry about that.
He's got a record called Not a Perfect Man. That's a dope record. It came out in '95.
I'm gonna have to check that.
Yeah, Not a Perfect Man. It was the first album that he did after he left Uptown.
Okay.
And but yeah, and for him, it was like, once again, remember, is that he comes along with the baritone, deep voice where, because you got Silk and guys got the high voices, falsettos and tenors and all of that. And he's got that grown man voice. At the time he's singing Teddy Pendergrass records, and
He
it's just a
sounded real
shame
close
that,
to Teddy, when he sung
yeah,
when he
close
made
the
over
door,
Come On Over to
close the
My
door.
Place. Yeah, he
Yeah,
sung
come
Come On
on,
Over
yeah,
on the
come with
Uptown
me.
Unplugged album. Sound almost just like Teddy,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's just the fact that, his career didn't take off. But think about it, man. Look at during that time, it was so many groups and singers.
and
Unlike it is
singers.
now, where you got like 10 or 15 people. Back then, it was just so many people, man.
Right.
But he was dope. Christopher Williams was dope.
Yeah, and still is. Okay. Has everyone gone?
Yep. It was on
Okay.
you. I'm sorry. We got excited and we talked
Yeah,
about
no,
it.
so that was my last one, which was Christopher Williams and stuff.
Okay.
So yeah. So we've been on for almost 2 hours now. So guys, we want to thank those who have been Kenneth Walker, who's been below stuff in the chat. We've Chris has been support setting up having some chats. And Robert Nelson as well. So just want to thank you guys for sticking with us as we've been going through. They've enjoyed it. As an honorary mention, somebody mentioned Will Downing.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Ooh, yeah, Will
was like the new
Downing.
Luther, but the baritone version. He made
Yes.
Superstar, but did y'all hear that?
Yes,
The version of Superstar?
yes.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
I got a lot of his music, man. As a matter of fact, he's big in the UK now. He's a big artist. He came out
too,
like
yep.
yeah. As a matter of fact, he started out singing like in the 80s, early to mid 80s, when back in the day they had a lot of club records, and they would have these bands or whatever, these artists or whatever, and they wouldn't really be a real band, they would be studio bands, but they were like records that the DJs plays. He started out singing. There's a record that came out back in the day in the early 80s called IOU by this group called Freeze. They spell the letters AEIOU. It was a dance record. He's singing on that like back in 83. But yeah, man, he's dope. When I first started buying his music, the album covers, the CD covers was like, oh, who is this guy? And I bought the music and it was dope, man. Elegant music. Will Downing is super dope. I Go Crazy. That's a remake.
Yeah. For real? Oh yeah, from the white group, from the white dude with the long hair.
Paul Davis.
Right.
Paul Davis.
Yep. I remember seeing that on YouTube.
Yes.
And what's Miles Davis' son? Miles Davis' son. He need to be an honorable mention too. Miles J.
Miles J.
For you.
Yes. As a matter of fact, that's one of the first CDs I ever bought. That's like the second CD I ever bought in my life. That's like back in '89. I'm gonna tell you, Miles J had that deep voice. As a matter of fact, he was a Teddy Pendergrass protege. Teddy Pendergrass, he came through Teddy.
Right.
Yes, he came through Teddy.
I just found out about him last year, to my shame. You've been down with him all that time. I just found out somebody posted that song on Instagram or something, and I fell in love with it and went back and did my homework. And I'm a fan now. He's still out there performing.
Yeah, go back and listen to his album, Irresistible, man. That came out in '89. Neither one of us. He remade that. It's just, man, Will Downing was dope. And then he also had an editorial journal situation in a magazine like 20 years ago. I remember he wrote an article talking about the industry's purposely getting rid of a lot of masculine baritone singers, because at that time it was a lot of falsetto singers and all of that. But he wrote an article about that. Yeah,
you already know. Yeah, that's definitely done on purpose.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, guys, we've come to the end of today's episode. There are two things I want to be able to chat with next time. Phyllis Harmon is one, just a way of celebrating her, just to get an understanding of her, but also just looking back at the 80s. And, a lot of people are really big into the 90s, but there was something about the 80s that meant that songs weren't put in the same box as they were in the 90s. There was just this flow of just popular music, even though R&B stations will be playing a lot more there. So just to compare the two decades and see which did produce the better type of music and stuff. But guys, yeah, it's definitely been great just to think about our different our top 10s across male and female and seen how many people agreed with us and stuff like that. I always encourage those who are watching or listening to put down your own top 10 and just see if it mirrors what we put down and stuff.
For real.
Yeah, but thanks, guys. I'm going to stop. Yeah, I'm going to stop us from our live stream. And yeah, guys, R&B podcast. Appreciate Woody and Sheldon making time for us to be able to have this conversation. And
thank you for having us, man. Always good to chop it up with y'all, man.
Yes, sir.
Great chopping it up, man. Yeah, you always got the knowledge and the background, backstories.
I appreciate that insight, man. Like you met these people in real time. You know, I'm listening to the music, the stories you talking about, running into them, and it's valuable, man. It's just dope, man. I mean, that Mandela story, and you in the Hit Factory, and you running in the loop. Oh my God,
that's me up for real. Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, it's been great, and I think that's the beautiful part of celebrating old school music. Is one thing for me to interview, but I think talking about the music and talking about and sharing our love for music is definitely a good one. Kenneth, as we wrapped up, mentioned Stevie, Shaka, Dino from H-Town, Jasmine.
Oh my goodness, Dino, man.
Tina Marie. Fantasia. Actually, he mentioned Brian McKnight. Brian McKnight. Yeah, Brian McKnight.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Marvin, So Brian McKnight. He was just actually. I don't know why I forgot to leave him up. And so I mentioned
so many
men. There were more men for me that I could just pick from. The females, I struggled to find the females because they weren't as popular internationally as they were in America. It was mainly pushed the male stuff. I mean, Freddie Jackson was a massive star, James and all these guys. So yeah. But anyway,
think about Al Green, Ron Osley, Al Green.
Oh my goodness!
I had Ron, and I took him off just because I just
thought. Too. I did too.
I took him off as we're going through because I just thought.
Do a group one because a lot of people I was scared to say because they were in groups and they never had solo careers and stuff. So we need to do one of groups too. That would be dope. Male and female. Yeah. You should do male and female groups.
Yeah. Well, I mean, next week. This time next week, Basic Black are launching their album. They've got a new album that they've put together, and we're doing a listening party. So I will send you guys the links if you want to be part of that. But it's we're going to go through the entire album. It's going to be from 5:30 Eastern. They've been back in the studios and stuff, and so it'll be great as they and I actually did tell them I was going to ask you guys if you wanted to be part of them. They're going to be on. We're going to play their album and just to give it a preview and stuff. So yeah. That's
all right, man. Just remind me during the week.
Yeah, definitely will. Definitely will do. Yes. Yeah, I'll definitely do so, guys.
Appreciate it.
All right, guys.